Welcome, everyone. I call the December 14th, 2021 regular City Council meeting to order. I invite you to recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me. Please unmute your microphone and turn off your video while we display the banner. I'll give everyone a moment to do that. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Before we move on to the agenda items, I'd like to acknowledge the remote meeting format. Proclamation 20-28 regarding open public meetings is still in effect. Therefore, this meeting will be held entirely remotely. Public comment will be allowed both in writing or verbally. Sign-up sheets were provided by the city clerk's office via link from the agenda. At this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of council members by position number. Please say here when Laura calls your name.
Deputy Mayor Zorns. Here. Councilmember Thompson.
Here.
Yep. Thank you. Councilmember McAuliffe.
Here.
Councilmember McNeil. You're muted. Sorry. Councilmember McNeil.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Olsen.
Here.
Councilmember Dorr.
Here.
Councilmember Agnew.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Okay, on to meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? All right, seeing none. Councilmember Agnew.
Thank you, Mayor. If I can be so bold, I'd like to ask the council to have a moment of silence for the 6 states that were devastated by the tornadoes that we had back east. That'd be Arkansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, Mississippi, and Tennessee. They seem to have considerable damage and a significant loss of life.
Councilmember Dewar.
I appreciate that and would like to also add maybe a moment for the 800,000 people who have known to have died from COVID.
Yes, 2 horribly tragic events that, yes, please let's take a moment of silence for those. So please take a moment. Thank you both. Thank you both for bringing those topics up and letting us have that moment. All right. So our first item that we have is the recognition of outgoing council members, and our Deputy Mayor Zorns will take the floor for this item.
I've got it. We don't have any public engagement opportunities.
Nope.
Okay. All right. The end of 2021 is in our headlights, right? Okay. This is our last council meeting of the year. So before we get too late into the night, we'd like to recognize and thank our outgoing council members. Get my tissue box handy. Serving your community takes time and a special kind of commitment. Public service, especially these last few years, can be difficult and challenging. We'd like to say a few words about each of them. and then say thank you with a short video. All right, Liam Olsen served as our council member from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2019, and then as mayor from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2021. Mayor Olsen represented the city often in regional meetings and forums, and as a professional engineer, Liam was able to advocate for the city often in regional discussions about transportation and utilities, sharing perspectives and helping others understand the unique language and technical processes used. And that takes a special skill to do that. He was active in the Association of Snohomish County Cities and Towns and the Snow County Tomorrow Steering Committee. You might not know this, but Liam also served on the Landmark Preservation Board since 2010. Special thanks to Liam for leading our council during challenging transition to virtual meetings and quickly adjusting our meeting formats to ensure public participation. And Tom, you're next. Tom is one of our long-standing council members, having served as a council member since January 1st, 2010. Tom has served on so many boards and committees and has been a strong supporter of our Bothell Fire Department. He helped develop the city's first arts cultural plan and has most recently served as the North Shore Parks and Recreation Service Area Board Chair, leading the very important work of upgrading our senior center. And Rosemary. Rosemary has had a long and successful career as a public servant for more than 40 years. She was a Washington State Senator from 1993 to 2016. And prior to that, she served on the North Shore School Board of Directors from 1977 to 1991 and was founding member of the Greater Bothell Chamber of Commerce. Rosemary served as council member January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2021, and was a strong supporter of our businesses as well as our schools and parks. We will miss her greatly, although we know she will likely still be involved in the community, right? Supporting various different community groups and partners. We have a short, yes, I know, round of applause. We have a short video, but I don't know if anyone had anything that they wanted to say. Tom, leap in, please.
Well, I want to thank those that have been on the council with me over the last decade. We've done some strong work together, and we've always been an eclectic group of individuals. Every vote I voted on was based on what was best for the citizens of Bothell. I feel this is the council's responsibility, not to advance personal goals, but citywide goals. I was asked by a council member why I was on the dais. Was I a patriot? I had to think about it for a while. She was right. 1968, I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. All on this dais have said these same words. To some, they're just words, but not to me. And my oath had no expiration date. The reason we're eclectic is because we live under the freedom of a flag, which gives us free speech, religion, to choose what we want to be religious with, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, the right to a fair trial by a jury, freedom from excessive bail or cruel and unusual punishment, separation of church and state. With that being said, I thank the citizens of Bothell for trusting me to do the right thing over the past 12 years. And as an old soldier from a ballad, I plan on just fading away, as MacArthur said, just slowly fade away. My wife has doubts.
Oh, goodness. Rosemary.
So I just want to thank you. Beautifully done, Deputy Mayor Dorns. It's been my privilege always to serve my community. over the last 40 years, in every different position I've held, it's been about Bothell. So what I want to ask you is this. Please remember the young people that we need to incorporate into what we do. So we have now 2 young people on the Arts Commission, 2 young people on the Parks Commission. Please continue to bring forward our young people to have a voice. Critically important to me. And the other thing I'm very, very proud and pleased with is our economic development manager. We always want to support small business. That's our critical need. And I'm privileged and excited about the fact that we have someone serving our small businesses. And so I hope as we move forward, don't forget our skateboard park. Okay, I couldn't resist it.
No, I don't blame you. All right. Did anybody else want to say anything? Davina does. Go for it, Councilmember Dorr.
Well, I didn't see the mayor raise his hand, probably because he's not a man of many words. But I want to thank all of you for your service. And I know we haven't always agreed, but I do respect everything that you've brought to council, and we have found many areas of agreement over the years. Rosemary, you and I over Main Street and skate parks in particular, and the economic development director. So, and you've always been very gracious. And Tom, you know, I always admire that you just vote where you stand, and that's all. I really appreciate that about you. And then I just wanted to say a few words about Mayor Olsen, because he and I served together for quite some time on the landmark board together. And I just wanted to appreciate the role that he was thrown into in the last couple of years, never having been a mayor and then having to navigate COVID and all that entailed. I just want to appreciate the difficulty that he has been through, and probably more in isolation than any other mayor in terms of support and having his peers around him to support him. And so I just wanted to take that moment and appreciate him and thank him for his service and the time that we've served together. So thank you and good luck to all of you in the coming years, and stay in touch. I'm sure you will, and have some happy holidays this year. Hopefully stress-free.
I'm not sure. Councilmember Thompson, were you? Yes, you were. You got the floor.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. It's been an interesting 2 years that I've gotten to serve with all of you. And I, like Councilmember Dewar, have appreciated serving with all of you. Tom, like Councilmember Dewar said, you vote your conscience, and you vote your conscience all the time. And I never have any doubt that you are voting for what you think the right thing is, even when you're wrong. And Rosemary, I've got you on the skate park. I will carry that torch, and I'll do my best to make that happen. Congratulations on a very long and successful career. And Mayor, what a situation you were put into. It was an untenable situation with some pretty strong personalities up here on the dais. I know I didn't always make things easy for you. And with everything that we had going on, thank you for serving how you did. And that goes to all of you. Thank every one of you for the service that you gave to the city. I appreciate you. And someday I'm going to have to figure out how to end a sentence with with something other than, and that's all I have to say.
Okay, and Councilmember McNeil.
Deputy Mayor. Liam, we didn't have a lot of opportunity with COVID to get to know one another. But the time that we did have together, the times that we've spoken, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for the way you served our community. Open, honest, transparent, and always ensuring that you listened with open intention. And for me, that means a lot. That says a lot about who you are as an individual. And I feel like after you're no longer serving, we can still go out and get that beer that we've been talking about, going out and getting together and ensuring that we continue the friendship that we started here on council into the future. So I just wanted to tell you it's been an honor serving with you. Thank you for everything that you've done on behalf of the Bothell community. You will be sorely missed. Councilmember Agnew, when we first met, we met with a mission. And the one thing that you told me is to always lead with my heart. And everything that I've done, everything, every decision I've ever made, I've listened to that intently, leading with my heart on behalf of my community. Many years ago, we started a group called One Bothell to help save a golf course. But that has led into much more. And having you and leading with you and sitting beside you has been an honor that I will never forget for the rest of my life. You have become a friend of mine that I will cherish for the rest of my life. The service that you have provided not only on this city, to the city of Bothell, but to this country is unparalleled. It's unmatched. And I want to thank you for everything that you've done, because to me, you've paved the way for my kids and the future generations and showing them how it should be done. So thank you very much, Councilmember Agnew. Rosemary, you've done, over your 40-year career, you've set the standard. You've broken those glass ceilings. You've paved the way for many women to do many great things. And I look up to that, and I often hear the stories about some of the things that you've done for the youth of our community. And that inspires me each and every day to continue fighting for the youth today so that we can ensure tomorrow they have everything that they need to pave the way for the future generations. And to come to Olympia, go to Olympia, and have you embrace us with open arms on behalf of the Bothell community as a senator, to bring that back home and to serve on the Bothell City Council, I can't tell you what that meant, to have the time and the opportunity to serve with you, sitting beside you, and legislating on behalf of the community together. To me, I will never forget the fact that we not only worked together in Olympia, but we were able to work together at home. And my wife just wanted to share with you that she appreciates everything that you did for her as a young woman and showing her, paving the way for her. It transcends all of us. And I wanted to just thank you from the bottom of my heart on behalf of the Bothell community, how much you've done. And this region will never forget all that you've given in your service. So thank you.
Okay, so before we cut to the video, nobody has any, oh, wait.
Oh, my turn.
Your turn.
Yep. So yeah, as Davina said, I was a man of few words, but being up in city council and then being mayor and having to do the most talking during the meetings, I think it's made it easier. And yeah, and as Davina said, you know, getting up in front and public speaking is no big deal anymore, as we talked about, you know, on her first campaign and then on my first campaign. So I just want to say thank you to the entire council. It's been a pleasure working with all of you. Everyone has definitely had the best of Bothell in their heart. So I think that's made it easy for us to come with so many unanimous votes and always having great discussions, disagreeing, but we always come together and do what's best for Bothell. So I think that made this past 4 years, you know, definitely easy in that sense. COVID did its best to make it challenging. You know, as I have reflected on the past 2 years governing during COVID as mayor and in the entire council, I think we still had all the work, we still had all the challenges, but we never had the time to celebrate or the time to get together. So I think that was the biggest challenge that we had over these past 2 years. And the city staff, they're amazing. I don't want to point out too many people, but Erin, she's been amazing. I'm very thankful that she was the interim city manager for the past year. I know she has made council easier for all of us, and I think brought us together in this past year. So, and overall, just again, staff, amazing. The collection of people that we have here, continuing to work for the city. It's many people ask, are you celebrating that you're, done with your term? But it's very much a bittersweet moment. And it's really the people that I've worked with and the staff that makes it challenging. So thank you. And Jean, take it away.
Would someone hand our mayor a Kleenex? Because my box of Kleenex can't get through there. I'm with you on that one. I just have a couple things that I wanted to add. Rosemary, I don't know if anybody has referred to you, and you are one of the most optimistic people I know. You have great insights. And I don't know if anyone has ever used the word pluck to describe you, but girl, you got pluck. And your sense of kindness and decorum is just really appreciated. It's made you a stateswoman, and I really appreciate that about you. And then Tom, I mean, so much I've learned from you. I have left you a note on some of that. But one thing that has stood out is that you are an independent voter, doggone it. You are going to vote independently, even when we all want to go home. You're going to vote your heart. And then the other thing that I appreciate about you, do look for the silver lining, and then you also look for the good in things, and then you stand shoulder to shoulder. And I have a hunch that's a little bit of your soldier training there, and I very much appreciate that about you. And Liam, oh my goodness, you are a constant reminder to me to slow down and think deeply about things. Your calm, thoughtful demeanor has been very, very welcomed in our shared 4 years. So the collective brain trust of you three is going to be really missed. And so we really need you not to be a stranger, even if it's, during the 3-minute comment periods. We need to see your faces and your comments. So I haven't ignored anyone. Are we ready for a fantastic video? Yeah, let's roll the video.
Can't see me.
Now they can. There.
Nice.
All right, Mayor, you ready to take it away?
Yep, we still got some work to do.
Yeah, guide this ship.
So thank you very much for that, Jean. Appreciate that. Whatever elves that you had assisting you with that, I thank them too. Okay, well, let's move on to our next item. So I believe we have Chancellor Esterberg here from the UW Bothell. There we go.
I'm here.
Welcome.
Great. Well, Mayor Olsen, Deputy Mayor Zorns, and council members, thank you so much for inviting me here tonight, especially on the last night. And it was a real pleasure to see the tributes to all of you who are leaving the council. Let me start by thanking you for your leadership of the city during what has been a very challenging time for all who are leading institutions. As you all know, I'm the brand new Chancellor of UW Bothell. I think I'm not quite 3 months in. And I have learned very quickly that Bothell is an incredibly special place, and UW Bothell is an extraordinary campus. And I'm very, very grateful to be a transplant to this part of the world. I'd like to share with you just a few of the things that we're working on and answer any questions you might have about where the campus is going. And I think, like all other institutions, we are beginning to come back from the pandemic. We are mostly face-to-face this quarter. And the first priority is to learn from this experience. We have historically been mostly a face-to-face institution, and we learned very quickly that we could offer instruction in a virtual mode. We have mostly come back to face-to-face. The vast majority of our courses are face-to-face. So I hope you see a little bit more traffic of students and faculty and staff on in the community, but we are still telecommuting partly. And as we begin to emerge, the first project is really to evaluate what should we do in person, what can we do remotely, and can we begin to extend the way in which we serve students in our community by doing a few more things remotely, but while still retaining that face-to-face intimate environment that UW Bothell is known for. As we emerge, we're also beginning to work again on our strategic planning. So our work on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and ensuring that all who come on our campus experience a warm, welcoming, and inclusive environment is very much a priority for us. And certainly another key priority for us is our community engagement. We are very thrilled to be in a campus that has been recognized nationally for our work in community engagement. And I want to assure you that as we come back fully from the pandemic, our commitment to the community is still first and foremost part and parcel of who we are as a university. So whether it's community-based learning, whether it's students working as interns, whether it's faculty members, staff members, being a full part of the community, please be assured that we are eager to be fully engaged with the city of Bothell. And I look forward to being your real partner. I hope that as I get to know the community better, you will see that I am eager to be your partner. I really do want you to see University of Washington Bothell as your university, Bothell's university, and that you feel as home on our campus as you do in your own home. I believe very ardently in the public mission of a public university, and that means we serve our public. The city of Bothell is our public. So with that, I'm eager to answer any questions you might have. And again, with deep appreciation for all you do to lead the city and to provide that welcoming environment for the University of Washington, Bothell.
Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for coming to meet us. We're very happy to have you, and hope to have a really great relationship with the university going forward. I think we all appreciate having our hometown campus and learning institution, and I look forward to future endeavors with you. So thanks so much for being here.
Great, thank you so much.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you. And I very much appreciate meeting you. I'm very excited that you are here with us in Bothell. I've heard good things, so I'm looking forward to more. But here's the question I ponder a bit. We have a lot of students, young people who live in the dorms or the apartments or condos around Cascadia and the University of Bothell. What, as a small town, Main Street community, do they need?
That is such a wonderful question. I think commuting students who commute from close by have somewhat different needs. Transportation is really important to our commuting student population, and that's the largest portion of our students. So ensuring that we have good bus routes, I am very, very much looking forward to expanded bus opportunities to campus, because that is really critical to student success. When we have a few more students living on campus, for them to be able to go downtown and to have affordable opportunities for dining, for example, for them to feel like this community is their community is also really important. And I think that the city of Bothell is a very welcoming environment. So when students go downtown, will they feel welcomed? Will they have opportunities to dine, to recreate? So those are the two kinds of needs that students have. But I would say that because the vast majority of our students, even when the residence halls are built, will be commuting students, transportation is so key in their ability to get easily to campus. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Zorns.
I just want to say welcome, Chancellor Esterberg,
Thank you.
and hope the rain isn't too overwhelming. And as you were talking about students being getting down onto Main Street a few years ago, one of our favorite breakfast places, just a typical mom and pop breakfast place, was burned to the ground. But before that, just days before that, I remember driving by and seeing a collection of students sitting in the booths enjoying their breakfast. So I like you, am looking forward to when students can gather and just be part of the community on Main Street. And
Thank you.
And I will tell you, my husband and I are both double dogs, and we have a couple dog students, so we're kind of partial to the Huskies.
Very good. Thank you. I will say that it's a UW-Bothell alum that has one of the pop-up shops downtown. So it's not just our students, it's also our alums who I think contribute very much to the fabric of this city.
Councilmember Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor. Just real quick, Dr. Esterberg, thanks for coming tonight. We're glad you're here. We're glad the university is here. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. And
Councilmember
thank you for a very invigorating discussion around transportation housing.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Sorry to double dip, but I did want to make you aware of the challenges around getting 405 BRT and 522 funded, and any help that you can provide in advocating for that would be greatly appreciated. As you know, it's at risk of being postponed and whatnot. And so any way that you can help advocate for your students as well as the city of Bothell, we would very much appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Very good. I look forward to being your partner in that.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chancellor, for coming and speaking with us and telling us what you guys are working on right now. I do too look forward to working with you in the future and seeing how we can collaborate together as a community. Having the campus here in our community, it's important that we find ways to bring people together and our resources together to help people within our community. So I look forward to continuing our working together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Thompson.
I was just going to piggyback off of what Councilmember Dewar said. There's a letter that East Side Transportation Partnership is putting together, and I might send that your way to see if UW-Bothell might be willing to sign on to that letter, encouraging the legislature to fund those fixes so we get buses faster.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Chancellor. Appreciate you coming and taking the time to say hi and answering our questions.
Great. Thank you so much. I'll look forward to returning when we have more things to report, and look forward to a very fruitful working relationship with you.
Have a great night.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, on to our Economic Development Director, Jeanie Ashe, and she will share with us about the pop shops on Main.
Here I am. Takes a minute. So
Good evening, Council. Just if you will bear with me for a moment while I share my screen with you. And while I'm working on sharing my screen, I want to tell you how much I enjoyed the tributes this evening. It's a nice reminder it's a nice reminder for me why I do the work that I do. Okay. So let me just. That's not what I want to do. Okay, great. Thank you for your patience. So once again, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council, for this. I'm going to make some adjustments here to my screen. So if you'll give me just another moment. There we go. Okay, great. Okay, so once again, thank you for your time this evening. I'm here to give you an update on Pop Shops on Main. I will be reviewing the program, updating you on the installation cost, as well as speaking to next steps. So Pop Shops on Main was born out of COVID-19. The concept was to create a program that was inclusive and aided in the recovery of Bothell's downtown subarea. The goals of the program were that it would be a program for up and coming women and BIPOC business owners, would remove barriers to starting a small business, would support the entire downtown subarea, as well as create new retail sales tax. To take this concept, this idea from concept to reality, in March of this past year, you approved AB 2139, which provided the resources and programming to create the Pop Shops on Main. What you approved was the funding to convert 4 prefab sheds into usable retail space. You approved a Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Grant, and you also supported the contract, entering into a contract with Mercy Corps Northwest that would support the entrepreneurs and provide them with technical assistance. Pop Shop on Main, they also too achieves 2 of Council's goals. The first one being to pursue equity through inclusive and community engagement. So the Bothell Pop Shops Ad Hoc Advisory Committee was 8 community members from a variety of backgrounds that determined the type of merchandise that would be sold. They created the name of the program. They reviewed all of the entrepreneur applications and selected the entrepreneurs, and then helped promote the program through their social media channels. The second goal the second item on this that meets your goals is supporting our community's recovery from COVID-19. So this program not only supports, the startup of 2 new businesses in downtown Bothell, it also aids in the recovery and resiliency of the entire downtown sub-area by generating more foot traffic and customers for all of our restaurants and all of our small businesses. So Pop Shops on Main was the creation of it was 2 parallel tracks. The first one is being the recruitment and support of our four new entrepreneurs. As you know, we entered into a contract with Mercy Corps, and they did all of the recruitment for our entrepreneurs. You can see here that they posted on their webpage. They paid for advertising on Facebook. They had a newsletter that was sent out to almost 3,000 recipients, and then they had 12 applicants. And as mentioned earlier, our ad hoc advisory committee narrowed those 12 applicants down to the 4 entrepreneurs we have today. So once those entrepreneurs were selected, they provided technical assistance and advice to help them get up and running. They provided one-on-one counseling to support individual needs. They gave financial advice, marketing classes, inventory planning, and organization, as well as provided some legal advice. The second track to developing pop shops on Main was the installation of the 4 retail sheds. When the AB was approved this past March, council approved expenditures for up to $40,000 plus recurring fees. With my annual economic development budget of $50,000 and the Port of Seattle Economic Development Partnership Grant, I assumed there would be ample budget to complete the project. The actual cost, as you can see here, exceeded my assumptions. So I'm going to break these costs down for you, give you a little bit more information. So what I learned is that once you start putting people in garden sheds, that those sheds have to be built to residential standards. This added approximately $5,000 to the cost of each shed. Also, too, the site prep was a substantial increase. I had assumed that grading and laying down gravel would be the extent of the site prep, which is normal for a shed, but we needed to build to code, which included framed reinforced concrete pads with vapor barriers. Electricity was another addition. PSC informed us that we could not plug into their electrical outlets on their light poles, which required us to construct for electricity, hire a contractor to do all of the trenching and laying conduit, and then for PSC to actually install the power at one of their J boxes. So this slide also includes the reoccurring costs for the next 24 months, which are for the Honey Bucket and Recology. So Pop Shops on Main has been extensively promoted before, during, and after the grand opening. In addition to using social media to promote the shops, Bothell's communication manager has created a web banner, a dedicated web page, and has written an article for the Winter Bothell Bridge. Marketing will be ongoing, and we will be working with the pop shops to ensure they are doing their own promotions, cross-promoting with other downtown retailers, and the city will be exploring opportunities to promote all of our small retailers and restaurants in downtown. So this slide here shows all of the market analytics for our social media only. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you and highlighted some of it is because our communications manager said she has never posted and gotten so many likes. As, you know, the amount of likes that she received from these posts were unprecedented for anything else she's ever done. Also, too, down here on the bottom, Bothell-Kenmore Chamber of Commerce posted on their Facebook page and received a great response on our grand opening. So I just lost my, here we go. So what's next? As you know, Pop Shops on Main is a 2-year incubator program. The first year is proof of concept, where the business owners are learning about what operating a bricks and mortar business and figuring out what works and what doesn't work. They are also will be receiving ongoing technical and assistance and support as needed. And then the second year is about writing a business plan so that they can expand into bricks and mortar. And we will also be providing them with technical assistance and support in writing their business plans. So I want to thank you all once again for your support and vision for the Pop Shops. It's too early to measure the success right now, but the anecdotal information that I've been getting from the businesses is that they've had a tremendous start. Their gratitude also has been very humbling. I am excited for these 4 businesses because Pop Shops on Main is a program that is helping these businesses build their credit history, their rental history, their vendor history, everything, all of the support and history that banks and lenders need and want when working with small businesses. So when they do expand, they'll have a lot of great background. I have received several inquiries from community members wanting information about how they can participate in the program. I followed up with all of them and am going to be meeting with one of them just next week to talk about opportunities. And also two of our neighboring cities have been tracking this project and plan to recreate our program for their communities. So that, with that said, I would be happy to take any and all questions that you might have. Let me finish sharing my. I need
Deputy,
a vision. Sorry. I'm trying to quit. Am I still sharing my?
oh, there, we're back to normal now. So Deputy Mayor Zorns.
Well, I am trusting everybody's going to have all the questions and more so that I miss here. So a couple spring to mind, and then I'm going to pass the baton on. One, thank you for this, because I think we're all very excited about it. In your opinion, would it be worth at some point, council, having a discussion expanding and adding more pop shops if we had the opportunity?
I absolutely do believe that is an opportunity for council to talk about. There's a lot of considerations for doing this, and I would be happy to expand on all of them. One of the things that I do want to say now for your consideration is that we have essentially become landlords. I mean, this is an awesome program, and we're doing it to support women and minorities. But when you look at the cost of the actual construction cost versus the return on the investment and renting them, et cetera, if we were to rent these, we would just about break even. So there's that consideration. And then also to where, just where would they put them, and what type of program would you want to consider? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, Deputy Mayor, with regards to yes, absolutely. I think it deserves a bigger conversation.
I think you're right. As you were sitting here talking about the costs, I was thinking about Kenmore's got its own incubator program. And so could you do, a hybrid of different kind of incubator? That's not in my wheelhouse. I just, ask the questions and expect someone to have the answers on it.
Yeah.
So it's a good point. Landlords, being a landlord comes with a cost, and we have to be mindful of that. And then the other thing is, my memory was all their power is supported by the generator.
Yes. So, and that's added some costs. And fingers crossed, I haven't checked it yet, but the installation of permanent and reliable power should have been completed today.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so the generator, because that was going to be my next question, is who has to go fuel up that generator?
So generator, just so you know, was plan B in the event that Puget Sound Energy could not install the power in time, and they couldn't get to it because of all of the storms we've been having, and they've been very busy. So that has been one of our costs, and it's been about total in fuel and renting the generator about $2,000.
Okay. But the generator is just the backup.
It is going away by Friday.
Okay. That's very exciting. All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to yield the floor to others, and thank you again for this update.
If there are no.
Oh, there we go. I know. Councilmember McAuliffe.
Because what Deputy Zorns asked, many of my questions were answered. However, we're into this about how many weeks, Jean?
Not quite a month. We're just shy of a month.
And are you feeling like they are positive about what's going on with them? Or, I've been down there, and I feel like they're kind of isolated a little bit.
That's a really, I think, a really good observation, because they are sitting at the end of a vacant lot. The idea, though, is to pool, walking, the walking community from Main Street across the street to the other shops. But I've been down there on a Saturday, and there is a tremendous amount of foot traffic coming over from the park. People walking back and forth in front of those shops and
Nice.
parks. And then when I talk to them about where their best days are, and their two best days are Thursdays and Saturdays. So
Nice.
Thursdays is when their customers who know them and want to come shop, and Saturdays are the people walking to and from the park.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear that. Could you do a promotion with an ice cream shop? Baskin and Robbins. I mean, maybe they can do a little Baskin and Robbins Christmas thing.
That's a great idea. And I think, like I said, they should work on cross promoting, and we'll definitely see what we can do.
Yeah, I think, because like I said, they're a little bit stranded. I wish there was something, but Baskin Robbins is close, so maybe we could use what they've got. But I love it, and I've been there, and I'm glad that they're feeling good about it. Is that right?
Yes, they are. Like I said, they've been very, they're learning, figuring things out. They've been very optimistic, and again, the gratitude that they have is just really humbling.
Oh, good. And the one I worry about the most is the farmers market. They struggle to be open.
Yeah, they've had. They are working on their supply chain. They're having some supply chain issues. And then also too, not having a reliable source of power has not served them well.
I heard.
We're going to iron these things out.
Well, you know what? When you open a new business, there are always those issues. So I appreciate your work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Thompson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thank you for the update, Jeanie.
Mhm.
I had a question. How many businesses did we have apply to be in these shops?
A total of 12.
Okay. Did any of them say that they just had trouble finding smaller, affordable places to rent, and this was a unique opportunity, or was that not part of the conversation?
So what was part of the conversation is that all of them, the ones that are in the shops today have all had like a home-based business.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were, as small businesses, they can't afford the financing that it takes to start a small business and go into bricks and mortar. So that's been the case for one. Another one does have a plan for expanding, and they're very excited about the opportunity to do a business plan and to plan on going into bricks and mortar. But this really has been all about the inability to get financing to start a small business. Has been the primary reason for them starting here. And this really does give them an opportunity to build their credit history and create relationships with vendors and set themselves up for future success.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeanie, are there set times that they're open?
Yes. So they're open from Thursday through Sunday from noon to 6. And this again is testing the waters. That's what the subcommittee originally decided. And they're open year round for 4 days a week. The shops have an opportunity to stay open longer if they want to, but they're committed to those 4 days. And I'll be tracking their success month to month, so we can look at opportunities and ways that we can and think about how to attract more business. I'm kind of assuming that February and March might be lull in the business. So how can we get more folks down to these little shops and shopping? Well, also too, another thing I didn't mention is that Begin at Bothell will be profiling these businesses in their next newsletter, their email that they send out. So that will be another opportunity to generate more customers.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the report, Jeanie. And yeah,
Happy holidays to you all.
I know. I'm going to go check them out and see if I can find some Christmas presents.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, looks like we're on to visitor comment. I believe we had some written, and we have one or two people looking to speak live tonight, I believe.
Yes, Mayor Olsen, thank you. We received 2 written comments. The first one is from Brian Mitchell regarding AB 21196 and deploying automatic traffic safety cameras. The second was from Ben Mankey, who wrote regarding the mayor, deputy mayor qualifications. And the council should have received copies of both of those, and those written comments will be made part of the record. So the next we have 2 people signed up to speak. Well, one person signed up, and we've also had a request for another person. So Pat Pierce has signed up to speak, and we've just paneled her in. So we'll give her a minute to walk down the hall here. Pat, if you can hear me, I need you to unmute your mic. And then when you're ready, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Got it.
Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
To start off with, I'd really like to extend my thanks to Mayor Olsen and Councilmember Agnew and Councilmember McAuliffe for their service. They've done a great job, so thank you all 3. But I'm here to really talk about last week's discussion regarding using criteria to select a mayor and a deputy mayor. I find it very concerning, particularly because you're putting into place a system that would preclude newly elected council members. Potentially, you could remove a majority of council from the right to hold office, because you may have a majority of 4 new council members when you do this. Furthermore, the example of criteria given was attending regional meetings. Well, many of the regional meetings are held during the day in a 2-county area, so some council members would be unable to meet that criteria due to their job. I think the criteria adopted should not preclude council members, nor should the criteria be designed to favor one member of the council. If criteria are used, they kind of create kind of an inequitable situation, which flips DEI totally on its head, and it would come out meaning divisiveness, exclusion, and inequity. So I ask you to keep the current system, which allows for council members to either nominate themselves or be nominated by a member of council, and when nominated, to speak to their qualifications for that office. That system would not favor or exclude any members of council. It's the current one we have, and so the newly elected would be part of the process. And that's my comments. Thank you.
You're on mute, Laura.
Sorry. We have one member of the public who has raised their hand to ask to speak, so I'm going to panel in Cameron Chapman. And then I'll ask for others.
Hi there, Council.
Hi there. When you're ready, you have 3 minutes.
All right. So I wasn't originally going to speak today, but so first off, I want to thank council members Rosemary, Liam, and Tom for their service, of course. What caught my eye and why I wanted to speak today, which, by the way, I submitted past the 3 p.m. deadline. So thank the city workers for helping me get in here and be able to speak. But AB 21190, I wanted to speak about. Soda zones are arguably unconstitutional, as they severely infringe on the rights guaranteed to us by that sacred document, as Councilmember Agnew passionately lauded during the outgoing recognitions. Article 4, Section 2, Clause 1, the Comity Clause, permits the freedom of movement, and the court's establishment of a strong constitutional right to freedom of movement has been a large, lasting, and has far-reaching implications. Recently, we've seen the strong implications being projected in Texas, for instance, with the state's attempts to limit abortion rights. Significant implications are involved in the comedy clause. In short, a person has the right and has to have the right for complete mobility in a public forum as a consequence of exercising their rights, among others, to speak freely. Back to soda. Section D of Chapter 9.04 of the Criminal Code of Bothell defines a prohibited area as the portion of the city described by the Bothell Police Department as having a high occurrence of drug-related activity. Now, these areas can be and are unrealistically prohibitive of the freedom of movement. As just one example, since the area surrounding McDonald's and extended stays in Canyon Park are considered prohibited areas, if you were prohibited from entering these zones and simply traveling, say, on your way northbound on Bothell Everett Highway past the interchange with 405, you could face arrest. Simple as that. And what is the reason that we're straining our constitutionally protected rights? Well, to prevent the possibility of drug-related crime. I urge you reconsider renewing it at this time before you consult with experts, or perhaps even lawyers who've been arguing in Bothell Municipal Court against these unconstitutional zones. As Councilmember Thompson says, that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you. That is all I show that have signed up to speak. If there's anyone else in the audience, please use the raise your hand function and we will panel you in for 3 minutes. Give a minute to see if anybody. I'm not seeing any others, Mayor Olsen.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to our consent agenda. Nothing was pulled. Councilmember Agnew.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Councilmember Dewar.
I second that motion.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Agnew to approve the consent agenda as presented with the second by Councilmember Dewar. Any discussion? Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to confirm, are we going to go back to council committee update reports?
Yes, we will do that as soon as we finish the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor.
Seeing no further discussion, City Clerk.
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Zorns,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember McAuliffe,
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Mayor Olsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Dorr,
Yes.
Councilmember Agnew.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you. All right, it sounds like we might have a council committee report. So does anyone have a council committee report they'd like to share with us? Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to, I sent an email out last week. I attended the PIC meeting. A lot of great things that are going to be happening in 2022. Some regional committees have opened up. And so I just wanted to see if anybody wanted to throw their name in the hat. I sent that email to Laura and it was distributed to council and Councilmember-elect. So I have my SCA board meeting tomorrow. I will be attending. And if anybody current council members or newly elects would like to throw their name in the hat, I'd love to have them. I'd love to be able to talk to the board about that tomorrow. And then hopefully moving forward in 2022, we can make sure that we're Bothell on regional committees and giving some updates to help ensure that our council is well represented out there in the region. And I look forward to continuing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Thompson.
Thanks, Mayor. I went to ETP, East Side Transportation Partnership, for anybody who's watching and doesn't know the 8,000 acronyms that we use. We talked mostly about support for the legislature to fund the WashDOT project that will allow the bus rapid transit on 405 between 522 and 527. I'm going to see if Dr. Esterberg is willing to sign on that letter for the University of Bothell as well. We also talked about the Metro Connect and kind of what they're doing in terms of bringing service back as we hopefully move out of the pandemic.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember McAuliffe?
Let me ask this question. Since you attended the transportation, my question is the people, the business people from Canyon Park to Bothell on Bothell Way are very concerned about the construction on that road. Is there any input on when, or are we still waiting to hear what Sound Transit does?
We're waiting for money.
Well, I know that.
So we won't know when until we know what the funding source is going to be. I think as of right now, Sound Transit has estimated a 2027 complete date. But there is some, it's a little bit up in the air simply because there's a portion of the project that needs to be done that isn't funded yet.
All right. So for those business owners that ask me questions, I could say it's still in the works.
Yeah, with an estimated completion date of 2027. And I think we're just sort of assuming that we're going to solve the revenue issue before then.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, final call for council committee reports. It's been a while since we had so many. Okay, seeing no further, let's move on to AB 21-196. So it is a consideration of adoption of an ordinance authorizing the city to deploy automated traffic safety cameras at stoplights and school speed zones if certain conditions are applied. And so I believe Captain Mike Johnson will be joining us. And there's the captain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, members of council, for having us tonight to consider this ordinance. If you have specific questions about the language of the ordinance, Robbie Sepler, I believe, is on with us tonight that can answer those. But I prepared a presentation tonight to cover kind of the basics of what we're asking and hopefully answer a lot of the questions that you all may have before we start dissecting the ordinance. So if it's okay, I will share my screen and jump into the presentation. Hopefully everybody can see it.
Nope.
Okay, let me try again.
There we go.
And it should be firing up any second. Is that better?
Yep.
Yeah, rookie. Sorry, new guy mistake. So what we're here to talk about tonight is the automated traffic safety cameras. And it's a new ordinance that's been crafted by our legal team. And what it's asking for basically are two types of systems, and both are outlined in the ordinance. Although tonight we're going to be focusing mainly on school zone camera systems. But the two systems are school zone speed enforcement cameras and then stoplight cameras, which are also commonly referred to as red light cameras, but the Washington state law specifically calls them stoplight cameras, so the ordinance does so also. And I want to just highlight kind of the reason why we're here. It's that safety of our kids who walk to school and the vehicles in the area that are transporting kids to school are a high priority for us. Our officers, every year we work really close with the North Shore School District. We give a class to the safety patrol every year on how to effectively stop traffic and be safe. We work closely with the campus safety folks on the school zones. And we finally got some of the beacons working this year after struggling to get some of those replaced. And I want to remind you that as we talk about this, officers are going to continue to work the school zones. That's one of the questions we've had is that, oh, so no officers have to do that anymore. No, we're still going to be out there on our motors and in the cars, and we're going to be working with the crossing guards, and we're going to stand there with the parents and the volunteers at the crosswalks, and we're going to continue to do those things. But the camera enforcement system is going to allow for a much more consistent monitoring of speeds and a much more consistent impact on driver behavior. The goal of the program is to slow folks down. There's an incredible difference of a vehicle striking a pedestrian at 30 versus a vehicle striking a pedestrian at 20. That's why universally in most states, and especially in Washington, they lower the speed limit down to 20 because it gives drivers more reaction time if a kid does something like jumping off a crosswalk. And it does really make a difference. Those slower speeds are less detrimental to a pedestrian if a vehicle strikes you. So for all those reasons, we believe that a constant monitoring of our school zones is going to create the safest environment that we can have out there. So one of the first questions we want to talk about is how it works. This is a graphic that's going to show how the car goes past. They enter the school zone, the beacons will be flashing, there'll be warning signs. And if they're speeding, the camera is going to take multiple pictures of their car from behind. And when they forward the information to us, it is just from behind the vehicle. And I'll get more into that in a little bit with our frequently asked questions. But the other thing is they send a violator. So if I were to speed through a school zone and get a ticket issued to me, I get an email with the secure link to see my own video of me driving through the school zone. And so what we find is in the cities that have these programs, there's a lot less court time than you would anticipate because people go, oh, that's me in the video. Okay, I guess I don't need to try to fight this in court. So the system actually works really well. It's in place in Linwood, Lake Forest Park, Kirkland, Bellevue, Seattle. Lots of areas around here have these school zone enforcement cameras. And this is just a very quick graphic of how it looks. Here's how the system operates after they get the video. So the event is captured, and then at least through this vendor, and this vendor is VirMobility. This is the one we've been talking to about how to implement such a program, and they're explaining to us of how their system works. So they capture the event, they securely transfer the video and still images to their back office, and they have parameters set up that in a school zone between this time and this time at this speed and an identifiable license plate, and they dump all the other potential violations. If it's not clearly articulated that the beacons were on, if you can't see the license plate, they don't even send them to us. So the violations set at the parameters that we've requested through the vendor then come to us. And each one is approved by a human that has a heartbeat. They review it and they look over it and they determine that there was in fact a violation. Then they would send the notice back to VirMobility, who sends out the ticket, and they electronically file the ticket through our court. And they also provide payment support. In addition to our court having some payment support options, VirMobility also does that. And they would support the court through electronically filing the tickets. And then they also have a public relations support portal that allows people who've been issued a violation to reach out to them to ask questions about how the system works. How do you know it was me? That doesn't look like my car in the video. So they actually can help out on the back end with a lot of that stuff also. And even though at this particular moment in time, we're not asking necessarily to move forward with red light camera installation, this is just a quick graphic of how the red light cameras work. I have seen them in action in Linwood. Anybody that's driven around down by the mall, when you're stopping at a stoplight and you see a very bright flash in front of you, you know that the car in front of you or some car is going through the intersection and running the red light. So the system works very similar. It takes images from behind the vehicle so that it's just the license plate. It doesn't capture the driver information. So this is how it works for red light. And then the process is identical to the school zone cameras. And so we won't hash that out again in the interest of time. And so when we talk about school zones, here's a map that shows you all the North Shore School District school zones within the city limits of Bothell. We worked with this vendor in particular and talked to them about how do we take the complaints we've gotten on speeding, the information our officers have about where they've been writing tickets, and the information we've gotten back from parents and pedestrians walking as we're working the school zones. How do we take that and make it into something that we can get an idea of what schools would make sense? So we walked through all that, and after a quick speed zone study, which is the next thing I'm going to show you, we came up with a list of these schools to initially take a look at, and I'll get more into that process in a minute. But Canyon Park Middle School, Crystal Springs, Frank Love, West Hill, and then 2 co-located campuses, Skyview and Canyon Creek, and North Shore Middle and Woodmore Elementary. And so those would be the initial schools we'd be looking at to implement the school zone system. Once we can get the vendor to do a more in-depth on-site survey that would give us some accurate numbers of the problem with the speeding. So this data was collected on February 10th and February 11th, which is right when people kind of stopped going to school in 2020. But you can see from the data that there is a percentage of vehicles that are clearly exceeding the school zone speed limit. At Canyon Park Middle School, for example, northbound, 46% of the cars were speeding, 71 of them in the morning and 42 of them. And the trigger number they used for this study was 6 miles an hour over. So if they were doing 26 or more in the school zone, it triggered the survey equipment. So you could see at Crystal Springs, it was 23% and 40% of the vehicles were speeding. And you could just go right on down the list. I'm not sure what happened at Skyview where only 1 car was speeding eastbound. I'm not sure if the equipment malfunctioned or truly there was only 1 vehicle on the road going the other way at that time. But this was a preliminary study. And the idea being that if council should move forward with approval of the ordinance, we can sit down with the vendor and get a much more in-depth survey of the speeds in these school zones. We believe, based on anecdotal evidence and our traffic officers on views of speeding violations, that these numbers are going to hold up, and we think these will be most likely the schools that will implement the system. And then here's some questions that we'd like to answer for you as we go through the program here. When's it going to go into effect? The first phase is going to be, as we talked about, school zones, and they're a little ways out. We are in the process right now of fixing the beacons at the 6 schools we've identified. The equipment's been ordered, and I'm not sure if they're fixed right this minute or not, but they'll be fixed very shortly. If council moves forward with implementation of the ordinance, we can then move forward working out some potential contract language with the vendor. There's permitting processes because these signs need electricity. So we'd have to go through the city permitting process, and the vendor would have to come out and do some significant on-site surveys to ensure that the viability of the systems within each of those school zones. So at the most optimistic guess that I could make would be May. A more conservative, realistic guess would be that we would be on board and ready to start with the program in September when everyone's back in school. So it could be delayed with permitting issues or access to power issues, but probably May at the earliest, and then September at the latest. How are we going to warn drivers that they're entering the camera enforced speed zones? And it would start long before we even put the camera systems up, and they're operational, as we'll engage in a community notification program. We have a pretty good following on social media. We would use those connections. We would work with the PTAs of the schools that would have the camera zones put in place, and we would work to make sure that we gave plenty of warning to folks. There would also be signs posted in the school zone alerting drivers that you are entering a camera enforced speed zone. And there would also be, by law and by just common courtesy, we wouldn't do it any other way, even if it wasn't a law, a 30-day warning window. And I reached out to our partners over at Kirkland Police Department, who said the warning window was great. They had, in the first couple of weeks, they had some people were getting the warning 3 or 4 times a day, and then they would see those same people start to trail off. And they initially had a whole bunch of people speeding in the school zone. And by the end of the month, it had gone down significantly because the people were getting a warning notice mailed to them so that they were aware. So we would do the 30-day warning window. Again, we would be messaging heavily on our social media platforms and working with the school district. So we're pretty confident we could get the word out. And then, as I said, in each zone, there would be plenty of signage and the big red flags indicating that there was a change in the traffic. What time would the system be operational? They would only be operational when there's beacons active. I know that there are some cities that just say, hey, from 8 in the morning till 3:30 at night, we keep our school zones active, even when there's not children present. We believe that in the interest of fairness to our community, that they would only be active when the beacons are flashing. And currently the beacons flash 30 minutes prior to school starting and 30 minutes after school gets let out. So we would continue to work and partner with the school district to make sure that the enforcement system is lining up with the beacon system. Would a photo enforcement ticket have any impact on the driver's record of the driver of the vehicle? And the answer is no. So the infractions issued by a photo enforcement system are a lot like a parking ticket. They attach to the vehicle, they don't attach to the driver's record. So while it may make it challenging for you to renew your tabs, it's not going to have any impact on your insurance or your driver's record if you get one of these. What if the driver is not the registered owner? The violations will be sent to whoever owns the vehicle, similar to a parking ticket. When you get a parking ticket, they just stick it on the window and the registered owner's on the hook. Now you can try to get your kid to pay it if they parked your car illegally or your buddy who borrowed it, but you're ultimately on the hook. So the example we like to use is if the registered owner was a rental car company, the rental car company gets the ticket, they pay it, and in rental agreements, you initial that you will pay any tickets that get assigned to the vehicle. And so they would just charge the credit card, most likely of the person who rented the car. Will commercial, public, and government vehicles be exempt from violations? And as written, there is no exemption in the proposed ordinance for government, public, or commercial vehicles. The entity responsible for the vehicle would be contacted and forward a copy of any infraction that might be issued in that case. Can images taken by the camera show the driver or passengers in the vehicle? And the answer is no. And that is specifically outlined in state law. So in accordance with that, the images using the automated traffic safety cameras, they can't capture the face of the driver. The system being considered for use by the city, it incorporates images captured after the vehicle passes. So it would only be the rear of the vehicle and the license plate. What can the images be used for? Again, in accordance with state law, it does prohibit any of the electronic images that are captured from the camera enforcement system to be used for anything other than the lawful court proceedings of the enforcement action that's being pursued by the camera. So speeding in a school zone would be the only thing we'd be able to use that for. Does the vendor receive a percentage of the collected fines? And the answer is no. They charge the city a flat, fixed monthly rate, and that covers the initial install and the ongoing operation and maintenance of camera systems. It's a pretty complex thing, and they do a lot of the maintenance. They do a lot of the back work, processing tickets, taking the payments, and all that stuff. And it is just a fixed charge that they'll bill us. How will the city use the monies collected from camera enforcement violations? And the program would allow for all the money to be put in the general fund, and it can be spent on any lawful purpose of government. It's expected that the safety camera revenue will first be allocated to the program expenses. So ideally, the first in revenue from any of the systems would go to pay the fixed monthly fee of the system. And then any excess collection could be budgeted for any purposes during budget development. So right now, if we start looking at May or as late as September to have the systems in place, we won't have a super accurate projection of how much revenue there may be in excess of the fees to pay for the system. So working with the finance director, Chris Bothell, he and I have had some conversations that until we have a better idea, they'll work with council for the 23-24 budget once we have a better picture of how much money there could be before they start allocating that money to any particular project or moving forward with any of those ideas. So when we talk about, let's see, make sure I didn't just skip one. When we talk about fines, here's kind of what we're looking at. So the number we have there is if you go 21 to 31 miles an hour in a school zone in Bothell, it could result in a $136 ticket. Now, we don't anticipate the cutoff being 21 miles an hour. You can see below that it ranges anywhere from 25, to 29 miles an hour as the trigger point for a ticket. And we're going to wait to see a more in-depth study of the traffic patterns in the school zones before we decide what that cutoff is. But the ordinance would allow for any speeding, which again, 21 miles an hour to 35 would be a $136 ticket. And then we are proposing that the graduated scale be used, that if you're doing 36 or more, that is 16 miles an hour over in a school zone, that you're gonna pay a little higher fine for that. That's a little bit more of an egregious speed. We got kids walking on the sidewalks, the beacons are going, and if you go through a school zone of 40, you're probably gonna end up paying a little more than if you were doing, 7 over and it would slip your mind. As you can see, what we're proposing puts us right in the middle of the pack of our regional partners in Bellevue, Kirkland, Lake Forest Park, Linwood, and Seattle. They all take a slightly different tactic, but they're all kind of right in the ballpark there. Lake Forest Park and Seattle don't use the graduated fine system, but Bellevue, Kirkland, and Linwood do. And what we're proposing for the fines are in line with current school zone speeding tickets, which would be 136 or more. Currently, if an officer were to stop you, these would be the first layer of fines that you would pay. If an officer stopped you, it's more of a graduated scale, but for ease of the court, ease of the vendor, and ease of the program, we just thought that 2 fines would be the way to go. And then finally, the last thing I want to talk about real quick before I turn it over for questions is safety, because there's a whole bunch of safety things all converging together in this ordinance. And in addition to the pedestrian and school commuter safety, there's a lot of other benefits for drivers and passengers, as well as the officers who would normally have to make traffic stops to have an impact on driver behavior. I have just bullet pointed 4 of them, but there's subcategories under each of these. When you use the camera enforcement system, no traffic stop occurs. We can have an impact on poor driving behavior without risking the officer getting behind a car in a school zone with kids present, having that driver now focusing on the police officer behind them and their lights flashing, and then having to navigate pulling over somewhere safely off the roadway while the officer also tries to get off the roadway in traffic with pedestrians. So eliminating that risk of the traffic stop is huge. It also creates a condition where officers and drivers don't have to engage in any type of adversarial confrontation, whether it's verbal or it gets physical or anything like that. The camera captures the image, the person gets a ticket in the mail, and there is no conflict between the officer and the driver or the passengers of any vehicle. You can consider it contactless enforcement, kind of like going and picking up your Starbucks order, nobody's touching anything. So you get the enforcement of the traffic safety laws without any contact with violator, which is often the distances. I hope this is going to sound down the road, but currently it would eliminate any COVID concerns. Officers wouldn't be concerned about contact in a vehicle where the driver may have any kind of COVID issues, and anything that the officer, if they're experiencing COVID issues, they're not passing it on to any of the violators of the vehicles. And then probably the biggest thing, and there's a lot of concern and a lot of training we're going through about bias in law enforcement. And this type of system eliminates any bias about or any part that bias might play in enforcement decisions. So without being able to tell who's driving the vehicle, there would be no image of the driver to the police officer. It truly is the officer deciding this violation occurred or it didn't. So it would significantly reduce the opportunity for any bias to play a part in in who gets a ticket and who doesn't, or who gets stopped and who doesn't. It's just the back of the vehicle, the license plate, and that's the decision point. And with that, I know I did a lot of talking really quick, and I'm happy to go back and revisit any slide, and I'm happy to take any questions. And I think Robbie's on, I hope Robbie's on, to answer any specific legal questions you may have about this type of ordinance being put into place.
Thank you, Councilmember Dewar.
Screen share here.
So sorry, I had a little trouble navigating. Thank you so much for the presentation, Captain Johnson. A lot of my questions were actually answered by the presentation, so that's super helpful. Because I was wondering about flashing warnings. I was wondering about. I did appreciate that there's no pictures of the drivers, and it eliminates bias, so that's great. As a parent who attended a school where 3 girls were hit by a car. The very busy intersections around Woodmore and North Shore Junior High, this hits home particularly for me, especially as I see the traffic numbers around that school. So I'm curious how many schools are there in the city of Bothell?
If you count private schools, which we don't, let me get to the map here and I'll count them up real quick. Because we're just mainly looking at the 6 right now. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think it's 12 or 13 if I miscounted the double located schools. So it's 12 or 13 of the public schools.
So last we talked about this, which was probably a couple years ago. We had put an emphasis on school safety, and so the officers, we were basically taking, I think, traffic officers and rotating them around schools during school drop-off pickup. Is that still the case?
It is when we have the and I hate to use the word staffing, but right now we're facing some significant challenges with staffing, and our traffic folks are oftentimes supplementing the patrol forces out on the road. We have had those days where we schedule people, hey, I need you at this school, here's the times. We make sure that everyone in patrol is aware of the beacon times when people are in and out, and sergeants oftentimes in briefing will say, hey, if you're not on a call, I need you at this school at this time. And the nice thing is with the staggered start times, you can get a little more bang for your buck by having an officer go from this school to this school to this school, if there's no calls holding or anything more pressing happening. And the feedback from school patrols and parent volunteers who are out there is amazing at the times, because normally the officer will go and either, if it's one of our motor officers, they sit right next to the school crossing guards and talk to them the whole time, and coach them on traffic. And then if they're in the car, a lot of times they'll get out and they'll talk with parents that are walking by and be a good visual deterrent. So they do what they can, and that will continue even with implementation of a system like this. Those human contact points won't decrease of us being visible and present in the school zones when we can be there, for sure.
That's great. So not every school, not every day, for sure, in terms of patrolling. So I'm curious so you have those first 6 locations. I assume it's kind of implied that it's by the choice of those 6 is by traffic volume or traffic infractions, but have you also calculated into that kind of matrix of how to decide which schools like accidents and that sort of thing?
Yeah, fortunately, there's not a significant number of accidents that can be attributed to the times when the school zone beacons would be flashing. We did look at that data. Sergeant Rogers was great. He compiled a bunch of stuff, but it was mostly speeding. And the complaints we get from parents, the emails we get sent into the website, and complaints from the school district about the speeding that triggered those 6 schools. Like you said, there have been those circumstances at Woodmore. and a few other schools where there have been some very unfortunate circumstances. And those were weighed in, but the traffic volume and the volume of speeding issues that we've seen were the reasons we looked at those 6 schools. But again, we're really going to look hard at the in-depth study that the vendor would supply once we have an ordinance and we're moving forward. They come out and they do a much more in-depth study.
That's great. Thank you. I have some just random questions now. Are there cameras that are solar powered? Or is that not possible at this time?
That's not an option presented to us by this vendor or the other vendor that we spoke to necessarily, because of some of the issues with the sunlight in our area, especially when you're talking about the winter months and the kids who are walking before it's really that light out. It could be an option if there's a circumstance where we really can't get power to one of the systems, but it's a school where we really need to have a camera enforcement system put in place. My guess would be that there certainly could be a solar option that could be employed there, but for the consistency of the operation of the system, electrical right now is probably the safest bet for us.
Okay, that's a fair answer. I was just curious if that was an option. And then I'm curious, when it comes to the ticket, the penalty, it's the same ticket for everybody, regardless of ability to pay. Has there been any consideration? I was thinking about how this might interplay with the community court, and if there are options for people to request some sort of lowering of the fee based on, ability to pay or something along those lines. I wasn't sure if that's something that we could consider or had been considered.
The court handles those things. In my conversations with the court, I would imagine they would treat these tickets just like any other ticket. State law, I believe, prohibits the judge from lowering the fine of a school zone ticket. That could have changed in the last year, but at least until the last year, you couldn't mitigate and say, oh, you were speeding in a school zone, but I can make it $19. But I don't know if that is impacted, and maybe Robbie knows, but I don't know if your ability to pay is a factor in that and not being able to reduce it. I would have to check on that, but I would be, I think we would be obviously looking to what you're saying at that, because it's the personality of our court, it's the personality of our city, that we do want to help people that don't have the ability to pay it. It doesn't make sense to overly penalize people who are already hurting, but I don't know. Robbie, did you catch the question? Do you know if the court could reduce based on ability to pay?
I did catch the question, and unfortunately, I don't know that answer off the top of my head, having not been involved with prosecuting parking tickets in the past. I don't know the answer to that. Without putting him on the spot, perhaps the city attorney does, but if not, Councilmember, I'd be happy to follow up with you with that information.
And I'm trying to look at that right now. The RCW related to school zones is RCW 4661-440. Because these are treated as Deputy City Attorney Sepler said, because these were treated as parking tickets, I'm not sure if that RCW regarding the prohibition against mitigating the fine would apply. That's something I can research and get back to council on.
I think that's something that I know at least I would be interested in, because I know $136 ticket impacts me differently than, other people in both directions. And so I would be interested if there's some way to mitigate that. I think it's important that, that we protect our school zones, but I just wanted to maybe think about that. And then the other thing that I wanted to plug was if we're finding that, and it sounds like we'll have a budget discussion later, but if we're finding that we're making some sort of net gain in revenue based on this, I would like to put a plug in for pedestrian safety, whether it be putting the money towards safe streets and sidewalks around school zones or bike infrastructure around school zones. So I just wanted to kind of put a pin in that so that we could discuss it when budget time comes around. But I thank you for your presentation, and I think I'm finally done with all my questions.
Deputy Mayor Zorns?
I like the plug for to consider expanding our safe areas for our students. And thank you, Captain Johnson, for your presentation. Very detailed, answered a lot of my questions. Got to scratch them off, but it didn't get rid of all of them. So I will have to say, I have a growing affection for the idea for non-arterials to all be at 20 miles an hour, but I know that would be a nightmare for some people to try to enforce. My concern is on a couple of things. Do people try to game the cameras? Like, do they know, is it very easy to outthink how fast you can approach them before you have to bring it down to 20 miles an hour?
I haven't heard of anybody trying to do that. You don't have to be at 20 until the school zone starts. You can't enter into a school zone at 25. You have to be doing 20. And so the camera would pick you up in the school zone. So it's not checking for speeders outside of the school zone. And
Okay.
so if someone wanted to do 50 miles an hour up until the school zone, as long as they got to 20, the camera would not see the violation, which is why we think it's really important to continue to staff the school zones with officers when they're available, because people certainly do speed to work and they go, oh, school zone, I got to dynamite the brakes and slow down through the school zone. And then they're back onto 35 or 40 miles an hour on the other side of the school zone. So we would certainly try to maintain some semblance of police presence in the school zones when it's an option.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And you obviously know drivers well. One thing that I heard, I was sitting there, I listed off, as you had the schools out there, I listed 5 of the elementary schools that I heard from parents when I was out doorbelling who were concerned about speeding around. And one problem, I think I've mentioned it before, is that where our sidewalks and our safe streets and sidewalks end, they sometimes go around corners where large numbers of kids are still wandering, heading home from school or heading to school, and they don't have the benefit of a sidewalk to mark them off and give them a little more edge of safety. And so you're saying that there would be officers present gives me greater peace of mind, especially for once somebody's outside that school zone and they want to pick up speed, but now we don't have sidewalks to protect our kids who are headed home. So thank you for being mindful of that and having a presence there. And then let's see, I think I just had one other question. Or maybe I didn't. Okay. I guess my only other thing is a comment to say, the cost of this system is something to be mindful of, but I don't know how you put a price on safety. So thank you for doing all this homework on this.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Captain Johnson, for your presentation. I think it's very important that we move forward with this. But I have a couple concerns about the 6 schools you mentioned. So when you mentioned West Hill Elementary, I'm not sure what their start time is compared to Bothell High School, which are both on 88th Avenue Northeast. That I walk that every morning. So I see the cars coming into the high school and the people standing outside waiting in line for West Hill. So have you looked at the start times to see how these 2 schools who are on the same road kind of can be monitored the best?
So the start times are kind of at the whim of the school district. They stagger the high school, the middle school, and the elementaries all at different start times to maximize the number of school buses that they need to buy every year. And so that school buses can get the kids where they need to go and then go to the next level of school to get those kids going. So the high school starts at a different time than elementary school, and it's usually before. So normally high school kids would be in the parking lot in class at the time the school starts. having a young son in elementary school, I know that his school starts at 9:20. And I think Bothell High would start significantly earlier than that. I think they're in that 8 o'clock. I don't have this year's start and stop times. It didn't get to me before today. So, but those are the beacon times are directed from the stop times of the school. So again, we would do what we could with the beacon times, but also it's the idea of having the high school SRO out there helping monitor some of the high school traffic. It would be our traffic enforcement officers on 88. If we think there's kids walking to the elementary school at the same time, the high school kids are going down the street. I don't want to presume they're all speeding, but we know that sometimes high school kids might get a little heavy on the gas. So we would have that in the back of our mind, absolutely. But the school start and stop times is the school district decision.
So let me, I know we kind of traveled around on this question. So what I'm asking is this. If the high school, Bothell High School, starts earlier than the elementary, would you be putting these cameras on when Bothell High School students are coming in or when West Hill is in session? Study?
The West Hill students. Those would be the beacons that the cameras would be operating under, would be the beacons for the students from West Hill.
So I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to point out, the West Hill school zone is not the same school zone as Bothell High. So it's not one of those campus co-locations where you get the 2-for-1 like a Woodmore and a North Shore Middle School. Bothell High is on 92nd and 180th is the school zone. The official beacon school zone for Bothell High is on 92nd and 180th. And the West Hill school zone is significantly down 88.
All right, so I don't want to correct you, but I walk every morning up 88, and I'll tell you Bothell High School traffic is enormous.
Oh, absolutely. The traffic is enormous, but it wouldn't necessarily be the same traffic that's in a posted beaconed school zone. And the camera enforcement systems are only capturing in beaconed designated school zones. Yeah, I have no doubt that there is a lot of Bothell High traffic all over the hill and through all the neighborhoods. But the camera system itself is only going to be capturing violations in a designated beaconed signed school zone. And it would be 30 minutes before West Hill starts and 30 minutes after. And it would only be in the school zone for West Hill Elementary. And
Okay, so I'm just struggling with this a little bit. Why wouldn't it be 30 minutes before Bothell High School starts?
Because the camera system, the school zone at West Hill Elementary doesn't cover Bothell High School. If I can put the map back up, I think fairly easily here, and show. Let's see here. Hopefully, no one minds if I screen share again really quickly. So West Hill Elementary is, again, it's not the same school zone as Bothell High. And the kids that would be walking to West Hill Elementary would be covered by that school zone. And the school zone beacons for West Hill would only be flashing when West Hill students are walking to West Hill, and that would be a half hour before West Hill starts and a half hour after. So the Bothell High School zone technically is just 92nd and just 180th. And those are covered under ordinance. So a school zone is designated and it's signed and it has beacons. And so the backside of Bothell High on 88, that's not a designated school zone. It wouldn't be 20 miles an hour from where the school zone at West Hill ends to the backside of Bothell High. That would be the speed limit that is on 88.
All right, thank you for your explanation. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Agnew.
Well, thank you for your presentation, Captain. I'd be remiss if I didn't support this ordinance As you eloquently stated earlier, that the amount of kinetic energy involved in a pediatric patient with trauma has a direct correlation to the outcome of survivability. And having seen the devastation of those accidents, I truly support it. Thank you very much, and make it happen, Captain.
I will do my best, sir.
Councilmember Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, Captain. A couple questions. I remember this being pitched to us during budget meetings as something that would be budget positive, and that was a feature that was a little more emphasized the last time this was presented to us than this time. Is that just because you're being super cautious, or has that information changed? Like, what are other cities in the area seeing in terms of how it actually affects the budget?
I would say our regional partners are very much net positive into their budgets.
Okay.
Again, without a detailed speed study that could accurately project the number of violations we would see, it wouldn't be my place to make any budget forecast. I would leave that to the folks that run the money numbers. But I can assure you that every agency that I spoke with about this, it is very much pays for itself and then some type of program. And the vendor has explained to us that the reason they come out and do such a detailed site survey is they don't want to necessarily implement camera systems that are expensive, that wouldn't at least be revenue neutral. And so they come out and do some pretty painstaking work to ensure that the projections are what we would need to at least cover the systems. But our regional partners are seeing a significant impact to their budgets.
Got it. And this isn't really a question for you, but the best way to actually ensure pedestrian safety is pedestrian infrastructure, and that's expensive. So as this, should this get approved tonight, and as this moves forward, one of the things that I'm going to be asking my fellow council members for is similar to what Councilmember Dewar brought up earlier. Is I think revenue that comes from this should go toward infrastructure to make it safer for kids to walk and bike back and forth to school. I would love to not have to have these cameras up forever, because we actually have the infrastructure that makes it so people can walk and bike safely in our community, which is really the problem that we have. We have really wide streets that invite people to drive really fast so that big fire trucks can respond to the accidents that are caused by the wide streets. And I would love to see the money that comes from this go toward helping to fix that problem. And you mentioned by state law that we cannot have identifying pictures. Is there even a camera pointed in the direction of the front of the vehicle?
Not according to the vendor or the representatives from our partnering agencies that I spoke with. The images they get are all from the back. The camera takes it as the car is going away. The camera then starts snapping the violation. The camera's at the front end of the school zone. As the car enters the school zone at a speed, it's picked up by the radar system that's embedded in the camera, and then it starts taking two images of the vehicle. One of the agencies I spoke to said that the violator gets a video of their vehicle, but it's all from behind. My understanding is that the vendor is keenly aware of the Washington state law and doesn't even provide any images that would have captured a face accidentally. So we wouldn't be getting those.
Okay, so those all come through the vendor. So got it. I guess the question that I have is for the potential for abuse. So I would be interested to know, like, if there even is a camera that is pointed in that direction. And that's something you're not sure?
I don't believe there is.
Okay.
The diagrams they've showed us and the other school zone enforcement systems I've seen, they're opposing. So the camera that gets the car going this way could potentially get a picture of a person going that way, but that person wouldn't be getting a ticket because
Yes.
that camera's not picking up their speed.
Okay.
So the officer would never know who that person was, and they wouldn't be involved in the incident at all.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next question is, I know that we're just doing the ordinance tonight, but the ordinance allows the contract. What kind of a time commitment would we be looking at? It seems that this is a pretty expensive system to install and set up, and they're probably going to want some sort of contract commitment from us.
I will let Robbie answer that question as he's been working on that part.
Okay.
Sure. Councilmember Thompson, so certainly it would be something that we could negotiate. From the initial draft contract that I've seen that was sent over as by way of example of what this vendor would be looking for, I think they're planning for a 5-year term with the possibility of renewing longer if needed.
Okay.
And there certainly is some ways of terminating early, although that may incur costs to the city because I think the vendor is putting out the infrastructure with the idea of 5 years of being in place.
Got it. And is that going to come back to us for approval, that actual contract with that 5-year term, or is that something that is going to happen internally after this meeting?
So if the ordinance as drafted, if it's approved, it would authorize the city manager to implement the council's policies that they would set by the ordinance. And so the city manager would have authority to just execute that contract by themselves. Certainly if council were to indicate a desire to talk about it some more, we could either come back with an amended ordinance or work to bring that back to council in the future.
All right, thank you. One last question. There are people in our community that are deeply concerned about giving police cameras and the potential for civil rights violations that could come from that. Obviously, that's where a lot of my questions are coming from in terms of if there even is a camera pointing in that direction. But could you speak to some of those concerns?
Yes, sir. The cameras are maintained by the vendor. We don't have access to move them, control them, view them without the vendor. So all the signal that comes from those cameras, any video, any still images, any recordings would go to the vendor. The vendor then screens the instances where there's been a violation. Those screened still shots come to us for review to ensure that there was a violation. So the only access we would have to any images from the camera are of the back of a car that was speeding through the school zone. And the state law prohibits us from using those images for any other purpose other than the lawful purpose of the camera enforcing the court proceedings for the ticket would be the only place we could even use any images we get from the cameras. But the police officers wouldn't have any access to the camera to use them for any other purpose. And I hope that provides the assurance you're looking for, or I can research the camera system more.
To an extent, it does. I guess the only other thing that I would worry about there is, in government, we have pretty serious oversight rules that don't exist in the private sector. So the vendor, I'm interested in what information they have and what safeguards are in place that our residents' information would be safe from how they would use it. Have they spoken about that at all?
The representative from this particular vendor and I have spoke at length. They don't preserve the images longer than they need to get them to the court or to the police department to review for the infraction. Now, if if I speed through a school zone and I get the link to the video, that link even has an expiration date on it. So it comes to me personally, and I can't even save it for longer unless I had software on my computer. I wouldn't be able to save it longer than the link allows for me to have access to it.
Got it.
Councilmember Thompson, I could provide a bit more information too from the draft contract that I've seen. There was direct reference to the Washington State Records retention schedules, which have very short timelines for the retention of these type of images. So I think that, and by that the reference was that the vendor would only be keeping them for that short period of time before deleting them.
And that is in the actual contract that they commit to that we sign?
It's in the draft contract that was seen, and certainly is something I'll be reviewing for before any final contract is executed.
Okay. In terms of what we want the money to be spent on. I mentioned earlier having it earmarked specifically for pedestrian safety in school zones, so we can start to work on the infrastructure issue, so we don't have to enforce. Is that something that would need to happen tonight for the ordinance? Like if council wanted to have that discussion, is that something that like we would need to do before we approved this, or is that something that could come back in the future?
So legally, the ordinance does not direct any specific use of the funding. I'll pass it to you, Captain Johnson.
Well, I would say that based on my conversations with Director Bothell, that the funds would go, in a sense, the council direction would come in the budget development for 23-24. Now, I certainly would allow Krista to jump on here if he's listening to give any further insight on that. In fact, there's the expert there, Chris.
Yeah, so thank you. Any excess collections beyond what's required to pay the fees to the vendor would be in fund balance for the 21-22 biennium. They're unbudgeted currently, and so they would carry forward to the next year. We anticipate having a policy discussion with council during budget discussion about what you'd like to do with any excess proceeds from the program. And we can either do that with a resolution, or we can just budget them during the 23-24 budget for any use. As Captain Johnson mentioned earlier, they're general fund revenues, and they can be used for any lawful purpose of government. So it's really up to the council's discretion. So if the council agrees that they want to spend that money on infrastructure around schools, we would just float a resolution to make that official, or we can just budget them with funding for programs that would support that in the budget. It would be up to the council to decide that.
Okay. What would happen to the revenues that came between now and 2023? Or is that just not going to happen because it's not going to get rolled out that quickly? I think September was what was said earlier. There won't be very much.
Yeah, so I expect there won't be a ton. If there's any excess collections, they would just be available for budgeting either immediately. So we could budget them. We could do a budget amendment in the 21-22 budget at the end of the, whenever we identify the fact that there are some excess collections, or we could just roll those forward into the 23-24 budget and budget them with the 23-24 budget. The money, we don't have the authority to spend, the staff doesn't have the authority to spend that money right now. We only have the authority to pay the program expenses. So any of those excess collections will be preserved for council action, but that council action could happen for the 21-22 budget or in the 23-24 budget. It's up to council discretion.
Okay, perfect. I guess the last thing that I would say is, I would be curious about contract term lengths. And if there's anything available that's shorter than 5 years, I'd be interested in learning about that when we do that. And I think I need to get a new call tag or a call sign because I was about to say I'm done again, but I'm going to find something else.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Captain Johnson, for the presentation. It's good to see you as always. You talk about safety around school zones. The intent of the program, is that to eventually educate people to slow down around school zones? What is the intent? What are we trying to accomplish here?
What we're trying to accomplish is changing driver behavior. That's always the goal, whether an officer stops you and talks to you or the officer stops and writes you a ticket. The goal is to change your behavior to be safer. And the goal of this program would be, as Councilmember Thompson said, that people change their behavior and we develop the safety in the school zone so that the program becomes obsolete. That would be the ultimate goal, I would think. But the short term is definitely changing behavior. And it has been working in the agencies that I contacted. When the system gets put in, they see a lot of tickets, and then about a month in, the tickets kind of level off. And so many drivers do change their behavior and start going a little bit slower in the school zones, which again, reducing those impact damages if a vehicle hits, especially a toddler pedestrian, is catastrophic. The vehicle weighs so much and the child does not, and it's pretty bad. So the goal is less speed in the school zones. And hopefully, I'm with Councilmember Thompson. If the program can eventually become obsolete because it's only getting 1 ticket a month, then we did our job.
That's a good thing, education. So in the other jurisdictions, do they do anything around education after a ticket's given, or what happens? You just get a ticket, pay a ticket, or is there educational programming that you need to go through?
I have not heard of any of the other jurisdictions having any kind of educational program. For moving violations in Washington State, a certain number of moving violations in a given period of time triggers mandatory defensive driving school. But I don't know of anything that attaches itself to these type of tickets because they're considered a non-moving violation. But certainly, as Councilmember Brewer said, there may be an opportunity to work with the court and have some kind of process where people can have a deferment. I'm not sure what it looks like, but I do know that our judge is very big on that type of a little bit of restorative justice, as it were. And so there could be opportunities for those, but I can't speak to those tonight because I don't know what that could look like.
Okay, so if there is excess funds, those could be used for educational purposes as well.
That would be up to Director Bothell and the council in how you budget the money. But from the PD standpoint, yeah, more education, more better. We want to change behavior of drivers and make it safer. And whatever gets us to that goal, the PD is happy with. But I'll let Chris weigh in on if that's something money can be spent on.
Yeah, that would be an allowable use.
Okay, thank you.
All right, seeing no more full flags here. Thank you very much for the presentation. Very informative, a great discussion. Definitely got all of my questions answered. So if anyone would like to make a motion, Councilmember Agnew.
Yeah, I'd like us to adopt the ordinance governing the use of automated traffic safety cameras within the city of Bothell.
Councilmember Dewar.
I turned off my video. Hold on. I second that.
All right. So we have a motion by Councilmember Agnew to adopt the ordinance governing the use of automated traffic safety cameras within the city of Bothell, with a second by Councilmember Dewar. Any discussion on this item? Laura, let it rip.
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Zorns,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember McAuliffe,
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Mayor Olsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Dorr,
Yes.
Councilmember Agnew.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Well, let's take a break and come back at 8:15. Welcome back. We are on to AB 21-197. So a consideration of a 1-year contract extension with Recology King County. And we have our sustainability and engagement coordinator, Emily Warnock, with us. So over to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Bear with me for a moment while I bring up my presentation. Okay. As previously mentioned, I'm Emily Warnock, Sustainability and Engagement Coordinator, and I'm here tonight to discuss extending our current contract with Recology to provide collection of garbage, recycling, and organics through June 30th, 2023, and to give you an overview of options moving forward. Here we go. And the current contract with Recology is set to expire on June 30th of next year. The contract gives us the option of up to 3 one-year extensions granted under the original terms and conditions of the contract without renegotiating. And to do that, staff would need to provide written notice to Recology at least 180 days prior to contract expiration. So we're looking at the end of this year. Extending the contract would provide time to thoroughly assess options for solid waste disposal moving forward, while giving us an opportunity to engage with the community in the process and hopefully minimize the impacts of the pandemic on that decision-making process. I also wanted to add that overall community feedback of Recology has been very positive, with things like additional curbside recycling services, special item recycling, things like community disposal containers that they've set up during snowstorms when service was suspended because of inclement road conditions, and also the successful transition of annexation customers and service day changes that we did back in March of this year. We have a few options for how to proceed after an initial extension. The city could elect to extend the current contract with Recology for up to 2 more one-year extensions. This would push out contract expiration to June 30th, 2025. We could also look at renegotiating the contract with Recology, or we could undergo a more thorough RFP process. So to give you a better idea of these options and their associated timelines, I thought I'd walk you through a bit of the history of the process when we initially moved to Recology. So in 2005, we started a new contract with Waste Management that was set to expire at the end of 2012. The contract allowed the city to extend for 2 years, which we elected to do, and that pushed out expiration to the end of 2014. At that time, ongoing issues with service and problems with contract negotiations led staff to recommend hiring a consultant to lead an RFP process to look at hauler options. And we did seek to renegotiate with Waste Management prior to that. The consultant we selected, Epicenter Services, was brought on board in July 2013 to help staff in developing that RFP and lead the process. It was finalized and published in October and closed in January 2014. We did receive 3 proposals from Recology, Waste Management, and Republic Services, and staff presented on those proposals for council meetings between March and June 2014. So the presentations included things like comparison of rates and services offered by each proposal, data and feedback that we gathered from interviews with other cities about their haulers, as well as a ranking of proposals based on criteria established with the consultants. Recology came in first across all of those categories. We signed a contract with them in June 2014, and they began at the start of 2015. All in all, the RFP process took about a year with an additional 6 months to move to the new hauler. All that to say, It is a lengthy process, and we want to make sure we take the needed time and provide adequate attention to how we go about moving forward. I also wanted to slide in a quick update on the Recology store. I know it's been a big topic of conversation. Staffing has continued to be a challenge, but Recology is currently training new staff for the Bothell store and is hiring. They hope to have a reopening date to announce in the next couple of weeks. I did want to acknowledge as well that the Shoreline and Issaquah locations have both reopened very recently after they found staff willing to work at those particular locations. So those stores are a resource for all Recology customers. Other stores like Bothell, as I mentioned, have had a bit harder of a time, but something is anticipated in the next few weeks. With that, I'll say thank you for your time. And if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
Councilmember Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. My only question was about the store, and you answered that, so thank you.
Yeah, I'll say that was my question as well. So, but looks like we have Deputy Mayor Zorns.
No question. I'm just doing like this major memory flashback of, which seems like 100 years ago, but back when, Councilmember Agnew had more hair and was sitting on the dais in the courthouse building, I think, when this conversation was first happening. And Recology, for the most part, has not disappointed. So thank you for the presentation and thank you for the good work.
Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious. I'm trying to figure out. I've asked a couple times about recycling of styrofoam, and was told that I could recycle it. It was on the website, and the website said I couldn't. And the only time I've ever done it is through the store. So I'm wondering, what is the actual policy now in terms of styrofoam? Because I can pay Ridwell, or I can do it free through Recology.
Right. Yes. And there are free options. I believe we have Steve from Recology on the call and in attendance as well. And he may be able to provide a more thorough response. I haven't checked Recology's website specifically for styrofoam collection curbside in some time, but the policy should remain in place that customers can request collection of recycling curbside and leave it out with their containers for collection on their next service day. Another option, if you have a large amount of styrofoam, is the Shoreline Recycling and Transfer Station, which accepts styrofoam free of charge.
So, sorry, just to clarify. So there's a mechanism by which I call and request the styrofoam be picked up?
Yes, so you can either call customer service to let them know that you'll have this material out at your curbside, or there is a form on their website where you can request that collection.
Okay, it has been a few months. I checked and there was no pickup, so I'm glad to hear that that's changed.
Yes, and I will look into that just to be sure. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Councilmember Agnew.
Well, thank you for your service. And I did call and you guys did take styrofoam that was out on the yard. So it does work. You just have to give them notice. And you're right, Jean, I was back in the old courthouse when this came up the first time, and they had a great contract. I don't think we've been not pleased with them at all during this thing. So thank you for doing what you're doing and the way you're doing it. I appreciate it immensely. And I will be supporting this.
Okay, not seeing anything else. Thank you for the presentation, and we'll look to Councilmember Dewar.
I'd like to move the recommended action.
Councilmember Agnew.
We're not quite in order, but I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion by Councilmember Dewar to authorize staff to provide written notification to extend the comprehensive garbage, recyclables, and organic collection contract with Recology King County for 1 year through June 30th, 2023, with the second by Councilmember Agnew. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, Laura?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Zorns,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember McAuliffe,
Yes,
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Mayor Olsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Dorr,
Yes.
Councilmember Agnew.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Emily. Thanks, Steve, for coming to our meeting. Okay, on to AB 21-198, consideration of contract for VirTra, de-escalation and judgmental use of force simulator. And I believe we will have Deputy Police Chief Clint Beck to present on this item. Really need to get those footsteps soundtrack. Clip, 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 clip.
We are working on it. It's kind of being slow. I don't think we have Deputy Police Chief Clint back in the audience. So I've got Captain Keller and Captain Johnson here.
All right.
Captain Susie Johnson, not Mike Johnson. There she is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that Deputy Chief Beck was going to start off the presentation. Hopefully he'll join us here in a minute. We're on.
Can I just jump in here? Sorry about that. Yes, I wanted to first off, I want to thank Mayor and Councilmember Agnew and McAuliffe for your service and your time over all these years, and so greatly appreciated. So good evening, council members and Mayor Olsen. We are really excited to share with you some of the benefits of the VirTra training platform and kind of show you what the system looks like and the type of training that it provides. We're asking for a consideration of a leasing agreement for a VirTra training simulator. VirTra is just an abbreviation for virtual reality training. It's an exceptional training platform that has 5 interactive screens that assist officers with reality-based training on de-escalation, use of force, and other challenging fluid crisis intervention scenarios. VirTra training is also recognized by our Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission and has certified training hours that are associated with it. The efficiency, versatility, and the quality of the training is remarkable. We're not requesting any additional funding to our current budget for this lease agreement. The VirTra system will be funded with our existing training budget or the state funds we received in July from the Washington State Treasury Department that are intended to mitigate expenses for unfunded legislative mandates. We're also exploring the possible funding of city's ARPA distribution. I will be turning it over to Captain Brian Keller, who is the department's risk management commander. He manages department training, policy and procedure, as well as hiring and professional standards for the police department. He's been very busy this past year, working on policy updates and training to ensure that we're following all of the legislative mandates and changes in law. Captain Keller has put together a great PowerPoint presentation to explain the benefits of VirTra, and we'll be able to answer any of your questions. So I'd like to turn over to Captain Keller.
Thank you, Deputy Chief. Let me share my screen here and we'll move forward.
Good evening, Mayor Olsen and members of the Bothell City Council. The Bothell Police Department believes that a well-trained police officer is key to maintaining and gaining the trust of the community. And in accordance with this standard, it is critical that a police officer can make the right decisions under those high-stress critical moments that they're involved in every day. A properly and appropriately trained officer can change the outcome of many of those encounters. In law enforcement, the ultimate goal is to de-escalate all the calls we go to. The Bothell Police Department wants to do everything we can to empower our officers and reinforce that they are doing what is right. Our community wants us to take every step that we can to prevent mistakes that are caused due to lack of training. Currently, our officers attend de-escalation training conducted throughout scenario training and classroom instruction. This training is very time-consuming and personal taxing, and it requires several personnel to staff safety needs and instructor role player assignments. Each day of training requires a minimum of 4 to 6 personnel to instruct and evaluate and act in the training. It also requires staffing adjustments for the personnel to attend this training, and this limits the ability for us to do the training more than once or twice a year and limits the variety of scenarios an officer can participate in. It's also becoming difficult to find a location what's available for us to do with suitable range and at a reasonable cost. Over the years, we've looked at alternatives to scenario-based training, and one of the best alternatives is the VirTra platform. There are others, none of them, virtual reality or otherwise, have offered the depth of training that the realism that VirTra does. VirTra allows for officers to be immersed in realistic environment using realistic equipment carried by the officer and the ability to work with other officers as partner during the exercise. VirTra allows for the officer to navigate the scenarios by using exact equipment that they use every day, and there is no need to wear headsets or additional equipment for them to wear. The officers participate with uniforms they wear, with identifiable or identical modified weapons and low lethality tools that allow them to have total immersion into the environment or the scenario. So how do we get here? In 2018, the residents of the state of Washington approved Washington Initiative 940, requiring police to receive de-escalation training and mental health training. The certified curriculum was developed by the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission and requires that all police officers to complete 24 hours of patrol tactics and de-escalation training prior to 2028. And once certified, receive similar training every 3 years. The Bothell Police Department is currently meeting that requirement, but it is our belief that the bare minimum is not enough, and there are new and improved training methods to protect our community, the city, and our police officers. In addition to the requirement for Washington Initiative 940, having a de-escalation training program that conforms to or is in line with the training curriculum designed and approved by the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission is required for us to maintain our state accreditation. The VirTra system will assist us by utilizing a tool that is standard training and that is also utilized by our officers who go through the basic law enforcement academy and are instructed by Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. It is essentially part of the gold standard in de-escalation training that will also be used by the officers and the Criminal Justice Training Commission to evaluate our officers in the future and to certify de-escalation training taught to our officers. Simulator training is not new to high profile and high liability occupation. Pilots use simulators to train and understand how to handle emergencies, and the VirTra platform allows our officers the same opportunity to practice the critical skills and learn how to deal with a crisis in a calm and professional manner. The VirTra training platform is present-day decision-making simulator that not only needs but is expected from the community we serve. Our personnel go to work knowing that their time will be filled with mitigating harm and interacting with people with the best or at times the worst intentions. VirTra was created to immerse police officers in science-based training designed to teach cognitive and psychomotor skills ranging from de-escalation to judgmental use of force and to overall situational awareness. The system is a multi-screen law enforcement reality-based simulator training used by law enforcement worldwide. It is programmed with the only nationally certified simulation curriculum for law enforcement through the International Association of Directors of Law Enforcement Standards and Training Certification Program, an independent third party. The curriculum portrays true life situations taken from actual events, and presently there are 99 hours of the program's curriculum also certified by the Training Commission. This training goes towards our officers maintaining their certification through continual education. The training curriculum is consistently evaluated and updated with new and complex scenarios. Examples of the new developed curriculum are such as autism awareness, crisis de-escalation, courtroom security, domestic violence, emotionally disturbed persons, and a very other ones, including low light simulations. VirTra has a methodology that clearly focuses on realism to achieve better outcomes. Its high resolution formats allows for the instructors to record and play back the scenario to evaluate the performance of the officer, being able to point out specific issues and show that the officer, as an after action review, allows for immediate input for correction and verification. The use of real actors played the part allow for our officers to perform as if they would on the street. They can be themselves and eliminates the extra personnel needed to run each of the evolutions. The consequences truly are varied. Our officers would have the ability to use all the tools at their disposal depending on the scenario, and the simulator allows for the use of OC spray, taser, and other tools needed to de-escalate the scenario. VirTra allows for the visual, auditory, and tactile stimulation that is needed for the immersion of the officer to the scene, and embedded distractions simulate real-life situations that can elicit a response from the officer similar to what they may encounter in real-life scenarios. VirTra has what is called branching scenarios. These branching scenarios allow for an instructor to move to other steps in the process based on the actions by the officer. Each scenario has multiple chances during the situation to change the outcome and realize that their actions could de-escalate or escalate the situation. Each training module is broken down into short learning segments, and this allows for optimal training benefits and allows for multiple cycles of training to be conducted, allowing for more personnel to participate during a given training day. VirTra also allows for the training to be focused and targeted on certain types of situations. With its focus there can be a clear objective that will aid in the retention of the topic. So let's talk about the benefits for us with VirTra. VirTra allows our agency to move to the 21st century and currently being used by a number of agencies within our state. By having our officers trained to a higher level, lessens our liability, and allows our officers to be better prepared for the daily occurrences. In my 41 years of law enforcement experience, I have had a number of opportunities to train in various training environments. In my opinion, this is probably the most realistic training platform that I've used in my career. It also adds for consistency in the training by utilizing realistic scenarios and training officers to communicate and look at the desired outcome. Ending the scenarios on a successful finish helps to reinforce the outcome and ingrains the positive results in the mind of the officer. It is a nationally certified curriculum and certified by the International Association of Directors for Standards and Training. And in addition, it has over 99 hours of certified training hours from the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. These hours will help our officers maintain their certification and will assist us in maintaining the accreditation that we have with the state and the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. VirTra has extensive branching options, which means that the outcome will be decided by the actions of the officer during the scenario. Based on the verbiage from the officer or lack thereof, and the action taken by the call in the scenario, it has the ability to have successful outcome or could escalate the situation. VirTra places the officer in a situation that can be reflected upon and gives them the tools that can be called upon to manage conflicts outside the training environment. It offers the feedback. It is only through feedback that law enforcement officers can learn what areas they excel in, areas they are lacking, and the best practices for handling certain situations. The VirTra platform allows for the fix of the issues to be identified. Coming off the feedback, and the next step is for the trainees to establish corrective action. Sometimes the progress means taking a step back and building up from the basics again. It is always better to fix the problems immediately rather than in the future when the bad habit becomes more habitual and harder to change. Research also shows that the highest improvement for performance is associated with the largest or amount of deliberate practice. By allowing for increased frequency, VirTra allows for officers to practice intensely, but also in smaller frequent training episodes. VirTra is cost effective. The system can be ready to go with short notice and can require only one instructor to run it. In addition to the costs associated with renting a facility, it is no longer needed, and the man hours used to develop the curriculum is non-existent, as there are hundreds of hours of training built within the system. Our community also wants us to make sure we are good stewards of our taxpayers' money, and this will increase the training while it mitigate potential future training costs. It will assist us in enhancing our officers' wellness by exposing them to high-stress situations in a controlled environment. The ability to work them through a scenario that will build their knowledge base and handle real-life scenarios will allow them to be better prepared to handle the calls in a calm and professional manner. They will be better able to handle a stressful situation if it is not the first time they're exposed to that type of situation. Police officers want to work for an agency that is utilizing proper and current training method. VirTra is an excellent tool for recruitment and retention of our personnel. Our officers want to work for an agency that is forward-looking, and VirTra allows us to enhance our current training program and bring us to what is becoming the standard in decision-making and use of force training simulation platforms. And during our recent community academy, we received feedback from those in attendance that they feel better knowing that our police officers are trained properly and efficiently. They also commented on having technology that we could demonstrate to them and our public officials what we are using is up to date, and that it will help give them and the community a better understanding of the split-second decisions and stressful events officers must go through. If approved, we will be implementing demonstrations of VirTra to our community outreach and to include it in our future community academies. The following will be two short videos outlining VirTra. The first run is from an agency who recently purchased the system, and it outlines their benefits to their agency.
My name is Celestina Perez. My experience with VirTra has been very positive. During the training of the VirTra simulator, there was basically a real life situation where you had to be patient, and in the scenario basically simulated real life where it didn't require any force but more patience. And in the VirTra system, it allows you to apply the same thing. Be patient. It's not always going to be a lethal or less lethal situation. It can be just patience and talking somebody down. We've benefited in the use of manpower. The less manpower we require for this system is beneficial to having more people come and attend at a faster pace, as opposed to requiring numerous role players for one scenario and resetting, as opposed to just immediately starting over. So it's beneficial in that manner where you can have multiple people just run through the system one right after another. Or if they require additional training, reset the scenario by the instructor and go over. And everybody's excited that we have state-of-the-art system here within our own police department, and it's something to be proud of.
This second short video will run through a de-escalation scenario that outlines a session of multitasking by the officer and a successful outcome.
In this VirTra simulation, Officer Sky Keat has been called to an emergency where a man holding a baby is threatening to drop the child from a bridge.
Okay.
I'll drop her, I swear to God.
All right, let's not do that. I'm gonna take a step back, okay? I'm Sky. What is your name?
As part of the scenario, Officer Keat must practice de-escalating not only the suspect, but also another officer who shows up on scene and whose actions may escalate the situation.
Put the baby down! Put the baby down! I got this. Holster, back up.
Right now.
come near me, I'll drop this thing off the bridge.
Romeo 39, back up, 100 yards. I got this. Get back.
Back off, you got this. That's right, you better back off. You better
Sir.
the way out. I don't want to see you at all.
Okay, sir, he's gone. Talk with me, okay? Let's get that baby taken care of, okay? She's crying. Maybe she's upset. Maybe she's hungry.
The VirTra simulator is intuitive. As an officer responds to the scenario, the simulated suspect reacts accordingly.
If they are practicing good de-escalation techniques, then the scenario is intuitive based on our partners here at the AG's office being able to lower the blood pressure, so to speak, of the subjects that are involved in those cases. And we look for a successful, peaceful.
In closing, we are asking you to allow the city manager to approve a contract for lease for the VirTra de-escalation judgmental use of force simulator. If approved, it has the potential to impact our community members and members of the Bothell Police Department by providing required and enhanced de-escalation training for the officers of the Bothell Police Department. And it is truly in line with the city's values of ethics, service, safety, innovation, and teamwork. So I am open to questions.
Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Captain Keller. That was really, really fascinating. And all I could think was I could have used something similar from a parenting perspective to de-escalate with my children when they were younger. Can I ask, I know you had said that this is going above and beyond required training. So in what way is there going to be a requirement by hours, or will it be dependent upon, I don't know?
Yeah, Initiative 940 requires to have 24 hours of de-escalation training conducted before 2028. So you can average that out, and we're not going to just do it all one time. You can average that out per year, and we're talking less than 8 hours a year. Truly, that is not, in our mind, satisfactory to keep our officers better prepared for this. So this is something that not only will we enhance our training, but also be in addition to the mandatory training required by the I-940.
Can I ask, are there above and beyond, like, so it's de-escalation training, but are there other kind of virtual simulators, say around, I don't know, how to deal with specific types of issues, such as perhaps domestic violence or things that might have a nexus with de-escalation, but also are just kind of specialty cases that officers might come across?
Truly, and that's what some of the training scenarios are. They're not just all the one you saw. A lot of them have to do with the type of calls we go to on a daily basis. Domestic violence is one of the topics. And really it is a decision-making type of a simulator. Everything is based on what the officer decides to do. If they move forward in one direction, which may not have a good ending, it will end up poorly. The officer is ingrained into the positive aspect of, this is the proper steps to take. When I run into that scenario out on the street, I can utilize the skills I practiced in the simulator. De-escalation, where it relates to emotionally disturbed individuals, people that are in crisis, autism awareness, those type of things are all included. And there's well over, I mentioned about 99 hours from the Training Commission, but there's well over hundreds of hours of training, and it's always being developed further as they go through that process.
Can I ask? Oh, thank you. So do all officers throughout the organization get some level of training, whether they're captains such as yourself, or?
This would go from the chief on down.
Okay.
And every officer in the state is required to go through the training that's mandated by I-940. That includes the chief on down. So what we talked about is, if I had to give 24 hours of training within 3 years for an individual officer, I want to make sure that I have more training than that. Having the ability to run our officers through the scenario, if we have it in our possession, on a regular basis, quarterly, truly does better towards honing those skills and making that officer better prepared for the actions they take out on the street.
That's awesome. So one last question. What if someone is just particularly bad at de-escalation and they continually make poor decisions in the simulator, I assume that means that they'll be given more opportunities. They won't just fulfill the requirement and then go on there.
Yeah, there are different ways to enhance some of that stuff, but I mean, classroom instruction, one-on-one instruction, clearly there's different ways to evaluate that. If an officer cannot pass our simulator, they're truly not going to put them back out on the street, right? We're going to make sure we train them up to a certain level prior to putting them back out on the street. Just like we do with the firearm, it's a qualified skill that we have to do, and it's a learned skill. And so if an officer cannot qualify at the range, we don't put them out on the street. We have to go through further training to make sure that we meet some of those needs and get them trained up to a certain level.
So the requirement is a minimum requirement, and
Yes.
then more is built in as needed.
Yes, I think a better trained officer would truly handle the more events out there in the street.
No, that's fabulous. I'm excited to learn that there's domestic violence training in particular, because I know that that's something that we'll be seeing more and more of as we come out of COVID and kind of things that have been able to be hidden because kids haven't been in school and people have been working from home. I think it's going to be a bigger problem, and so I'm relieved to know that there'll be that additional training for what may be a coming crisis in that area. So thank you very much for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor Zorns.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And got one of my questions already answered, a couple of them already answered, so it'll be a little bit shorter. My impression is that this training helps shape an officer so that they're more adaptable if a situation is fluid and changing, that gives them some flexibility in a difficult, very intense situation.
It does. As I outlined, we don't want to have our officers show up the scene or emotionally disturbed person and be that their first high stress situation, right? We would want to make sure that we have some training prior to that to get them not only indoctrinated into the process, but also to evaluate their ability to de-escalate that situation. We don't want to have our officers show up and that be the first time they've ever gone to a high stress involved situation. Truly, our training program allows that to happen right now, but this also guarantees and gives them some initial inoculation into that type of scenario.
Yeah, we don't want any officers winging it in that kind of situation. Not that question, it was answered. Do you already have space identified on where, I don't need to know the particulars, but do you already have space that you can use for this to set it up?
Yes, we believe we have a room and availability here at the police department.
Okay. And then, you invite council to do ride-alongs. Can you see where I'm going on this? I'm not sure that any of us would have the competency to actually participate in this, but I would appreciate having a chance to watch somebody work through a piece of the module at least.
Once we have this, the invitation will be out. We're more than happy to demonstrate it or allow individuals to participate.
Well, I think it would be a great learning experience to put our feet to the fire and say, okay, see how you would handle it. So, I mean, you have the freedom to put our feet to the fire on that, at least for me. And then I guess the only other thing is just that I appreciate that, there's it works to stay update, right? There's an update on this.
Yes, it is continually updated during the process, as well as new scenarios are brought into the situation. So it's ever evolving. They do develop new scenarios on a regular basis and do provide those.
Well, and then the other piece that I was thinking about is that people who have had frequent contact with officers kind of learn the language that's being exchanged back and forth. And I'm sure officers have to step up their game and approach that situation with a certain freshness and not a roteness. They need to be confident, but they need to not act like that. I mean, every situation is new and novel. And I would hope that this situation would build that kind of flexibility of being able to find different language to have the same outcome. Is that, I don't know if that makes sense.
No, that is our hope also. When I've instructed down at the academy under force type scenarios, oftentimes an officer who doesn't have that skill will get stuck in a continual, almost a broken record. It's like drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife, drop the knife. It's not working, right? And so you have to do something different. You have to take a different approach. Engage that individual, have some conversation. But a new officer that doesn't have this experience or doesn't go through this type of training oftentimes doesn't have the immediate skills to get through that scenario.
Right. Well, I really, really appreciate, I mean, it obviously is going to build some confidence and competence in our officers. So I appreciate bringing this into the Bothell Police Department, and do let us know when it's up and running.
Will do.
For us to see it. Thank you.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm so pleased to see this kind of training coming forth. I honestly understand that we are in a mental health crisis in this state and in our community because of the lack of help for people who are mentally health challenged, and also of COVID that has caused people to even be more challenged. So whatever we can give our officers in training and support, I would fully appreciate that. They're on the line, and I feel like anything we do to support them, I would want to do. My question though is, does this also include the navigators?
Well, there are scenarios that a police officer will handle on a regular basis prior to the navigator being there. Truly, we will try to involve our navigators in the training process and have them evaluate some of the scenarios to make sure they meet their needs. But oftentimes, these are the decisions, and going through these scenarios are the decisions that an officer responds to prior to a navigator getting there. And an officer has to have those skills to be able to handle that type of scenario in a safe manner to make sure they can de-escalate it so that a navigator can come into a safe environment and do that type of work.
Thank you. And I really appreciate this. It's so needed, and we're so glad that you kind of bring it forth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Agnew.
Thanks for the presentation, Captain. You know, I did a little training in my time, and this doesn't look like it's an inexpensive item. Have we looked out to any other entities like Lake Forest Park Police and that to see if they can offset some of the costs?
Offset as in allowing them to maybe utilize that at a cost?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that will be something that we will entertain or look at. The issue that we have is there are a number of agencies in the area that have this type of system, but nobody can get into it because it's being used very thoroughly by those agencies. We would evaluate how much time we are dedicating to it by our agency. That is truly something that we have some interlocal agreements with other agencies, and we will entertain that.
Thank you, sir.
You bet.
Councilmember Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to say that Deputy Mayor Zorns said that she was looking forward to trying out the simulator. I am looking forward to watching Deputy Mayor Zorns try out the simulator. Overall, I think this looks great. Question, how similar is this to the type of training that our officers receive elsewhere when they go out for training that we pay for currently?
Well, the training that we utilize is we haven't used this type of training here. It's at our training academy where the officers go through the basic training. And we have gone to some other agencies that use it, but the training we have done up to this stage has been a lot of scenario training where we go out to a specific site where our police officers act not only as the officers that are there, but the role players are actors. And we have instructors that are there, and we utilize what's called a simulation type of a tool. It's a firearm that fires a wax bullet that can be utilized if deadly force is to be utilized. But oftentimes the way we build our scenarios is there is a way to correct that issue prior to using any type of force. And so we allow them to de-escalate that situation. The problem you have as compared to this is there are times for setup, there's times for reset, as was outlined in that 1 minute video. With a computer-based program like this, we can do an automatic reset and start that scenario over. We can go through that process, and it is a very quick turnaround to have that scenario begin or to change that scenario to a different type of a situation. If you do things out on the street where you actually use real live actors, you're essentially training one scenario for that day, or maybe 2 scenarios that day. This allows us to have multiple scenarios during that training day.
No, I like it. Next question comes in 2 parts. First, how is success measured? And second, the other departments that already use this type of software, based on those measurables, like what kind of improvement do they see?
I don't have the information from those exact departments, but I can tell you that they are very happy with the system that they have. They utilize it on a regular basis. An example is the Everett Police Department and the Edmonds Police Department do a monthly training process to get their officers through that training scenario, or a number of scenarios. If they didn't think it was working, they wouldn't be using it. And I think that it's truly a very strong asset that we don't have, that, as Deputy Mayor Zorns talked about, is our ultimate goal is to get our officers up to a higher level of ability. And by not using this type of a tool or something that has a stress inoculation, it's going to be difficult for us to really get a strong base level of training for that officer.
So what measurables do they use to like measure success in this? Like, is there a way that we can like objectively measure we once were here and now we are here?
Yeah, a number, well, you mean as to whether the scenario was handled appropriately or not?
I mean, or whatever we're trying to train. I mean, anytime that you're looking to make something better, usually you get what you measure. So like, I have to assume that there is some kind of a measurable in here so we can know that like this is working.
Yes. So each scenario has a different type of an outcome depending on what the officer does. So if the officer goes through that scenario and practices proper de-escalation skills, ideally it's going to be a very fair and viable outcome in that training. And in order for them to pass the scenario, they truly have to use all the de-escalation tools they have at their ability and capability to get through that. Failing to do that, it's going to have a negative outcome in that scenario. And so when we go through that process of evaluating the officer's competency, it's going to be based on how they come through that scenario, what the outcome is. And there are going to be certain scenarios that are going to be chosen for that officer to qualify during that quarter or during that type of a training session. If they fail to qualify or come through that scenario in a successful manner, then we know that that training is not sinking into them, and we have to do some additional training to get them up there. So it is all, I guess, evidence-based training in the aspect that we look for the right outcome from that officer. And if they can't make it through that training session with the right outcome, we know there's some additional training we have to do prior to them being released up from that scenario.
No, and that's good. Everything you just explained to me was pretty subjective. Is there an objective measurement of success within this system?
De-escalation training, in my mind, does not have a yes or no or a 95% success failure aspect. An officer either can de-escalate, can verbalize, can talk through that situation, or not. If you're asking for me to say, is there a written test they take that's going to show that they have passed. I think that the outcome is that we're going to come through this at the end of the year or at the end of the training session with an officer that is higher, trained to a higher level, has some additional skills they have learned through the scenario, that they are able to apply that on the street. And ideally, the outcome that we're looking for is less improper uses of force, less abilities to de-escalate a situation, less citizen complaints regarding the actions of the officers, less scenarios that have a negative outcome. And a number of agencies, when they have implemented this, they've also looked at less liability as it pertains to lawsuits and litigation that comes out of any type of use of force for an officer, because they have demonstrated that they have taken every step they can to provide that officer the amount of training they can to make them better prepared for the scenario out on the street. In some of the training programs they do have with this company, there are some written exams to be taken, but that is truly not what we expect to have come out of this. We expect our officers to come out with higher level of competency to be able to handle some of those scenarios on a regular basis, the calls that they go to on a regular basis. And truly, we have a large number of new officers on our department. Bringing them up to an ability to have those conversations, to talk to individuals out on the street, truly is a benefit from this system.
No, and I totally get that, and that all makes all the sense in the world. I guess I thought it's like a video game. There'd be like a high score or something like that, and if there's not, then
It's not a video game, but there are going to be some pre-programmed outcomes that are a success. And if the officer does the right things during their scenario, he will make that successful outcome. So if we're looking to say if that's anything close to a video game, it is not. The officers that go through this training come out of that with an accelerated heart rate. They come through sweating, they come through jittery, they come through the aspect that their adrenaline is pumped way up. And allowing the officer to go through this in a controlled environment truly does allow them to be better inoculated and prepared for the incidents on the street.
Well, good. If all of those things weren't happening, it probably wouldn't be a very useful tool. So I am really glad to hear that. I guess the last thing that just I would say is that I'm glad to hear that this can fit within the department's current training budget, or there's going to be state money coming, possibly. I'm hopeful we don't have to use ARPA funds for it.
We are looking towards trying to make it very equitable and do through that process.
Awesome. Thank you, Captain.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Captain, for the presentation and giving us an update on the this very important training. My question, most of my questions have been answered, but I do have a question around joint response to calls, and how can we as a department ensure that the other departments that are responding to joint calls within our community are also getting this training?
I can't guarantee what their agencies are doing for their training. That's under their control. I know that every agency is bound by Initiative 940 to make sure they do that de-escalation training. Whatever method they choose to do is up to them. And if they fail to do that, then they're not meeting the initiative's outcome. A number of agencies in our area do have this type of a scenario-based type simulation. As we talked about, Everett, Edmonds, Monroe, Bellevue, the Training Commission, as well as a number of other ones in our neighborhood do have that. And it is also it's also a type of scenario-based training, simulator training that a number of agencies are talking about going to, because it gives that extra level of training that they can't do throughout the year. I mean, their staffing is as needed as ours. And so it's very personnel taxing in the aspect of doing the scenario training that we do now. Allowing to have this within our facility and within our training budgets allows us to utilize it at when the downtime is there, or to utilize it with less personnel for that staffing. So I can't guarantee what the other agencies are doing, but I know based on my conversations with their training divisions that they're all trying to look at how they can add more de-escalation training within their agencies.
Okay, thank you. And you know, just as we move forward with this, hopefully we can continue to have the conversations with those other agencies and ensure that we're all within the region looking at this collectively. Training is critically important. And if we have officers like in the Bothell PD Police Department that are having this type of training, but then we have other officers that are coming into our community that don't, that's where we need to, I think, have more of a robust discussion to ensure other officers, all officers in and around our community are having this type of training.
Thank you. We did talk about interlocal agreements, and we did talk about trying to open that up, and we will entertain that.
Thank you very much.
You bet.
Well, thank you very much, Captain, for the presentation. Like Councilmember McNeil said, lots of questions were answered, and I think we had great discussion. Just the one comment I had is, you know, I appreciate that this will make the training to be more frequent and for shorter intervals, most likely, instead of how, you know, we saw described where there has to be a lot of effort in developing and then lots of additional staff being involved and making like a big production out of it to get the same type of situational training that this can provide. So I think that's definitely increases the efficiency of the training for our officers. So yeah, looks exciting, creates, you know, some benefit, keeps us up to level with the other agencies. So we're not losing good police officers trying to go somewhere for this type of training. So it might be potentially a recruitment tool as well. So excellent. And I'll go to Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move the recommended action.
All right, Councilmember Agnew.
I will second that.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Councilmember Dewar to authorize the interim city manager to execute the contract with VirTra for simulator and training program for up to 60 months, with the second by Councilmember Agnew. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none. Laura?
Please say yes or no when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Zorns,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember McAuliffe,
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Mayor Olsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewar,
Yes.
Councilmember Agnew.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Can I just say I'm really sad to have Tom be the last second for the last time. Just wanted to note that. I will miss your seconds.
Thank you, Captain.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Have a great evening.
You too.
So yeah, looks like our last motion for this, well, potentially last motion for this council meeting. So let's move on to our next item, council discussion regarding qualifications of the mayor and deputy mayor. And this just seems to be an open topic for council to have had time to digest what was discussed last time and continue this discussion as necessary. So I'll open the floor. Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank council for bringing this forward this week, allowing us to have an additional discussion. And just kind of making sure as I went back and watched the last council meeting and some of the conversation that was had, I wanted to make sure that I kind of was clear with what my intent was, and that is to have some form of guidance within the process. And we often talk about our goals and what we want to accomplish as far as equity and inclusion and open and transparent governance. And I think that one of those things that resonated with me was that we have parts of our protocol manual that outline guidance for some positions, but not others. And so I just wanted to have an open discussion with council, see how they felt about it, see if there's important things to them for qualification guidance. But I want to ensure that, you know, at the end of the day, and maybe our council can let us know, but at the end of the day, ultimately as a council, even though we have that guidance, even though that we look at the goals and things that we're trying to accomplish, that ultimately the final decision lies on the council themselves as council members vote. So I wanted to open the floor for and having an additional discussion on it tonight. So.
Not a lot of additional discussion is. Oh, there we go. Deputy Mayor Zorns.
Y'all are cracking me up. I would hate to be in a gunfight at OK Corral with you guys, because it's like, okay, who's gonna twitch first here? It's a tough conversation, pretty intense emotion. I think putting some short language together that just says what we're aiming for in the protocol manual is consistent with what we have in the rest of the protocol manual. I think Councilmember Dewar made a comment that it's a political decision, and on one level I would agree with that, but also appointing boards and commissioner members are also very often political maneuvers, and yet they have goals and goals that are recommended in the protocol manual. So I think it's a good conversation to have. I think something can be crafted that's short and sweet, but it's not a box that has to be checked. Nothing in the protocol manual is technically a box that has to be checked. They are guidelines for us. So you guys need to weigh in, have this conversation. I think it's a fair and reasonable request on Councilmember McNeil's part. And we also are obliged to make sure that it's not heavy-handed, and it keeps it open for future council members in January, and 2 Januaries after that, and 2 Januaries after that. So you guys need to step up and help us fix this.
Councilmember Agnew.
Yeah, I think Gene's right. Tough act here, guys. I found it interesting that we started our conversation in our meeting with a discussion on how Liam was kind of thrust into the position of being the mayor. And Liam's done a remarkable job, don't get me wrong, but I think we got very lucky with Liam. I think we're in the metamorphosis of a changing city. We're growing up, and with that comes considerable change. We stand here and look at the possibility of having a mayor and a deputy mayor that are voted in for their qualifications, and not the fact that they're just friendly with a few other people. Our main goal as council members is to do what the citizens of Bothell want us to do. Do you think they want someone thrown into a position they're not qualified for? I don't think so. We have a number of very important issues that are coming up, choosing the next city manager being the paramount. We got a tight budget, we got more cleanup. We have a continued pandemic with more variants. So with that being said, I make a motion to accept that a list of qualifications should be placed for the next mayor and deputy mayor. The list should include the same as in our protocol manual for the election of boards and commissions. It should include experience as a council member, knowledge of the municipal and planning process, contributions to local and regional representations, public service experience, the ability to express ideas and concepts and philosophies, consistent, fair, and inclusive representation, chairing committees of both local, county, and state, and representing Bothell regionally, as well as having a strong connection with our regional leaders, and then following our DEA protocols.
Point of order, Mayor.
What's your point?
My point is that per the procedure manual, special meetings cannot be used to take action. Or not special meetings, sorry, study sessions.
Point of order.
What's your point?
Study sessions are council meetings. And all council meetings have the ability of having a motion and a motion being passed.
City Attorney? I think I would need some.
Yes, so it is correct that council can take any action they desire at any regular meeting. And a regular meeting is any planned meeting. And because the council meets on the first 3 Tuesdays of each month, sometimes the fourth, if one of the first 3 falls on a holiday, this would be considered a regular meeting at which action could be taken.
With that being said, with these measurable items, it will help set up our mayor and deputy mayor for success. I'd be looking for a second.
Deputy Mayor Zorns?
Second.
So I think I would need you to repeat your motion, or City Attorney.
No, if council decides to pass this tonight, what I would recommend is simply that I would watch the meeting tomorrow, write down exactly what was said, and then insert that into the protocol manual in the proper area for qualifications or selection of mayor. Or Tom, if you can repeat it, please do.
I'd be happy to repeat it. Experience as a council member, knowledge of the municipal and planning process, contributions to local and regional presentations, public service experience, the ability to express ideas and concept and philosophies, consistent, fair, and inclusive representation, chairing committees of both local, county, and state, representing Bothell regionally, as well as having a strong connection with regional leaders, and the following of our DEA goals.
Councilmember McAuliffe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you please clarify, either yourself or our attorney, does the protocol manual prescribe or dictate or require the council to follow the protocol as presented? I mean, I just don't know what the council can do if they decide, well, what is the role of protocol the protocol, sorry. Yeah. I mean,
Protocol manual. The protocol manual serves as a...
Is it law?
It is not law. It serves as a guide, and it is a council document. And so because it's a council document, it can be amended at any time by a majority of the council. And so even if there are prescribed processes in the protocol manual, they cannot be used to bind a decision by an individual council member, but they can be amended at any time.
I guess I'm just, let me just go back over this one more time. So it cannot bind any council member to make the decision they want to make when they're electing the mayor or the deputy mayor.
Correct. My understanding is that these would be guidelines that council should consider.
Gotcha.
Each council member can consider those, among other things, or not consider them at all. Each of you is elected individually to represent your constituency to the best of your ability, and that is for each of you to determine solely. But the council as a whole can amend the protocol manual to add certain criteria that they recommend as a guide that the rest of the council uses in making decisions.
And my second question would be, is the protocol manual brought up for reevaluation every 2 years?
I believe it's every 2 years or as needed.
Okay, so basically next January, it should be brought up for review.
It can be. I believe it was 2019, December 2019, the last time the protocol manual was updated. I believe there was discussion in early 2020 to amend the protocol manual further, and then COVID hit, and that became a moot point. But again, even if the protocol manual prescribes review every 2 years, it is a council document. And if a majority of the council wishes to wait 4 years, they may do so. If they wish to amend it after 4 months, they may do so. It really is a council document that's up to the council to serve as a guide for all.
So I guess where my concern is this. So say this motion is before us and we support it tonight. There's a brand new council in January. Do they have an opportunity to make additions or corrections to that protocol manual prior to their election of the mayor and deputy mayor?
Absolutely. So at the January 4th meeting, there is going to be an agenda. At the beginning of the meeting, there's going to be a question as to whether or not there are any changes to the agenda. If the majority of that council at that time wishes to change the agenda to amend the protocol manual, they may do so.
All right. Thank you very much. That answers my question, because I'm concerned that some of us will not be here. There's other ones that are coming in. I don't want to shut their voices down.
Is there any further discussion? Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to thank Councilmember Agnew for his thoughtful and thorough clarification on the guidance that he set forth that should be included in the protocol manual. We often hear about fairness and equity and equality and ensuring that we look at things holistically through all lenses. And I think that as we set our goals and we talk about equity inclusion, I think this is a prime example of setting the standard for what we want to guide us, our guiding principles. Not that we have to vote one way or the other, but just ensuring that there's language in there that at least opens the door to look at things, to take a second look, to take a harder look at things, to ensure that we're looking at things in a fair and equitable way. And I want to thank Councilmember McAuliffe for bringing up the point that, again, any council at any time has the opportunity to have their voice heard. This council, with the decision, motion, and a second on the floor, has the ability to make this decision tonight and set the standard for what they want and what they're looking for to be in the protocol manual to guide as a guiding principle, not saying that anybody has to vote one way or the other. So I want to thank everybody for having the conversation. These conversations are very tough to have. But I think as I move forward, regardless of who's sitting on this council, hopefully the councils in the future will look at things the same, that we collectively have the ability to change the narrative, to be a voice, to ensure we have inclusion. And I think for me, I will be supporting this because this to me tells me that we are willing to set criteria and a guidance similar to we do any other board and commission to ensure that we look at individuals for who they are and how they represent us and our community. Thank you.
Councilmember Agnew.
Thank you. One of the main reasons I'm bringing this up is, as you've all alluded to, thank you, I've been on the council longest. I've seen some strong mayors that we've had, and I've seen some weak mayors that we've had. But a lot of the mayors we had knew they were going to be mayor before the vote because there was meetings at a coffee shop here or there or anywhere. And out of that, we got some very poor mayors. You know, we've got some very good mayors. I think for the last, 6 years, we've been excellent with our mayors. I think before that, we had a pretty rocky road. I just think that this city, and I was told a number of times how we're such a small city. We're not anymore. We're not a small city. This isn't Mayberry RFD. This is Bothell, Washington. And we're turning into a professional city We have a professional staff, we have a professional fire department, we have a professional police department, and we in turn need to be as professional. And that is why I bring up the motion. Thank you.
So I'll just speak briefly to this. I definitely shared some of the concerns that have been brought up just overall with this discussion as far as having a set criteria or, requirements for electing the next mayor and the deputy mayor. So I'm glad to hear the city attorney say that, yes, every council member can vote how they believe they need to vote for who will be, in their view, the best mayor for the city and the community. So I think because I was concerned about in the future of change being needed, and there's a big change in the council members, that if we did have some requirements, just minimum years or any other kind of criteria that you can only have by being on council already, that it would exclude the community from choosing a change in direction and being able to make that. So I think it's reassuring that the next council still has their autonomy to make that choice. I think it's good to have this discussion, and I hope for the next selection of the mayor and the deputy mayor that there's an equally robust discussion in that first meeting to continue this conversation with the new council members, because I think it's a good discussion to have, to talk about the traits. And as Councilmember McNeil said, we have these criteria, these kind of qualities that we're looking for when we are interviewing the board and commission members that we appoint. So I think it's good to have guidance and some language in there for the discussion for the next selection of the mayor and deputy mayor. Anyone else? All right. Off to you, Laura.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Deputy Mayor Zorns,
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson,
No.
Councilmember McAuliffe,
Yes.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Mayor Olsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Dorr,
Abstain.
Councilmember Agnew.
Yes.
Passes 5-1 and one abstention.
All right. Another robust discussion with the council. It's what I appreciate with this council, that we have these conversations. People let their minds be known. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And let's get on with our last council conversation. James, I'm going first names. I'm just.
I love it.
I'm going out.
I love it. Liam, I love it. I just wanted, I would be beside myself if I didn't again take the opportunity to thank you for all your leadership, your friendship. The last 4 years when I met you and you ran, it's been an honor serving with you on council. Again, Councilmember Agnew, you know how I feel about you. Amazing person. The wall behind you tells the true story. and Councilmember McAuliffe, you will be sorely missed, but I look forward to continuing to see your next journey, where you go next. So I just wanted to once again say thank you. There's been a lot of talk around domestic violence and the potential uptick in domestic violence. And tomorrow there's an SCA board meeting that I'll be attending. And I just wanted to throw out one last time to council members and council member elects that there is an open vacant seat on the domestic violence task force. So if there's anybody interested, I would love to say that Bothell will come to the table and be represented on that domestic violence task force. So just want to throw that out. Want to say happy holidays to everyone, to you and your families. I hope you just have the most amazing holiday season and get time to relax and enjoy enjoy your families this holiday season.
I was going to ask who's what's everyone's favorite cookie this time of year, but I hadn't planned on having a hero to mention on our last meeting, but Tom, I think you need to know you're all our heroes. You are our hero. The stories that you tell from Vietnam, I'm glad that you go out and you share it in the classroom, and the dignity that you have faced in a lot of adversity on council, on the level of being misunderstood, has been a big lesson to me on how to rise above the fray. And I just appreciate you so much. You are a hero here on Bothell, on our dais, and thank you for sticking with us as long as you have.
Well, thank you, Jean. I just want to thank Liam and Rosemary for a wonderful time. We did a lot of good, and we should be proud of that. And I hope you guys are going to enjoy your time off as much as I am.
I don't know if I'll enjoy it as much as you, Tom, but I will enjoy it. Rosemary.
I will miss your sense of humor.
Yes. So I just want you to know it has been a privilege to serve with each and every one of you. We sometimes agree, we sometimes disagree, but all in all, we have a respect for each other and our needs of our community. So it has been my privilege to serve, not just with the council, but also with the staff of the city of Bothell. You do an outstanding job. You make our job better and easier. And I want to thank you for all your service as well.
Yes, definitely. I hope staff gets to take some time off and enjoy the holiday and the family, and just recharge their batteries for a brand new 2022.
Can I just say, particularly interim city manager Len Hart takes some well-deserved time off.
Yeah, she's been a rock star.
Absolutely. And Tom, I will miss your sense of humor greatly.
Get out of here.
I really will. You've made me laugh so many times, so hard.
I mean, somebody's going to have to second motions now. Like, we've got a void here, right?
Well, and who's going to vote down motions to adjourn? Anyway.
Speaking of which, shall we go out in style, and can I make a motion to adjourn? And can we may we have a vote on it?
I think we should have one more formal vote. So I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Zorns for adjournment. I don't know. I need a second.
You do need a second.
I'll second, because I know someone's going to vote it down.
All right, I have a motion by Deputy Mayor Zorns to adjourn with a second by Councilmember Doer. Any discussion? All right, Laura, want to take us through one last one?
Sure. Deputy Mayor Zorns.
Yes.
Councilmember Thompson.
Yes.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Abstain.
You guys are going to make this difficult on me. Councilmember McNeil,
Yes.
Mayor Olsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Dorr,
Yes, happy holidays, everybody.
Councilmember Agnew.
Nope.
Passes 5-0, 5-1 with one abstention.
Happy holiday, everybody. Love you.
Happy New Year.
Happy holidays. See some of you on the flip side.